I did park in the garage. I finally said, there's no parking out here. Got to go to the garage. Terrific. Sorry, everybody, we're getting a little bit of a late start. It's 1:07 on Thursday, April 20th. We are in our 6th day, 2nd week of budget hearings. And if we could get a roll call, please, Director Oster.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Councillor Cassidy.
Here.
Councillor Lindell. Councillor Rivera.
Here.
Councillor Villarreal.
Present.
Councillor Romero-Worth.
I'm here. If I could get a screen where I can see Councilwoman Villarreal, that'd be great, just because I'd like to know when she puts her hands up. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. And let's see, approval of the agenda. Do we have changes to this agenda?
No changes from staff. Madam
Okay,
Chair.
can we get a motion then?
Move to approve.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor, aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, that motion passes. I don't think I have anything to report at the start of our meeting here. I just welcome the police union and the Community Health and Safety Department. I don't know, I guess, Director Oster, do we have our union representative here, and is that where we want to start? There we go.
Madam Chair.
Let's start there, and then we'll dive in to the community health and safety budget. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Tony Trujillo. I am the Santa Fe Police Officers Association President, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you or address you, make a few remarks this afternoon. On behalf of the Santa Fe Police Officers Association, we are currently still in the contract negotiations. However, I would like to express on behalf of our union, our gratitude for being included in the budget proposal. I'd like to thank this committee, City Manager, Mr. Blair, and of course, Mayor Weber. With 19 vacancies, officer vacancies in our department, there is still a slight hurdle to overcome. However, this is definitely a step forward in the right direction in addressing the recruiting and retention efforts of our union as well as of our department. And again, we would like to express our gratitude for, again, being part of the budget proposal.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, we'll go on to the community health and safety budget. I see our fearless leader, Director Kira Ochoa, in front of us, as well as folks behind her. And what I've been asking everybody to do is, as you may come up and present or answer questions, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, because while those of us on the dais and on Zoom may know you, the folks live streaming may not. So if you could just, state your name and your title, I think that'd be very helpful in terms of understanding the breadth of city government and all the people that make it move. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Director Ochoa. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Kira Ochoa, Director of the Community Health and Safety Department. You have the first slide. First, I will introduce the team that makes up the Community Health and Safety Department. Behind me, we have our Community Services Director, Maria Sanchez Tucker, our Emergency Management Director, Brian Williams, our Fire Chief, Brian Moya, and our Police Chief, Paul Joy.
And just one other thing, Director, if you're not speaking into the mic, people on Zoom and live streaming cannot hear you. So when you
thank
turn
you.
away,
Gotcha.
you'll be a cutting in and out. for
Okay,
folks.
I
So-
will not turn away. No.
Yeah.
You don't want that from me. Like, then I'll be giving away cars and anyway, sorry.
No worries. Just thought I'd let you know how this works.
Okay, thank you so much. Shall I do that again or are we okay?
You're probably okay, but just everybody do speak into the mic because otherwise, while we might be able to hear you in the chamber,
Mhm.
because we're not sitting very far apart, it is absolutely radio silence for people who are watching and through either Zoom or live stream. So
Right.
just we've logged a few hours in here, so this is the benefit of our
Okay,
experience.
thank you so much. So, and behind all of these wonderful directors and chiefs, we have over 650 employees in the Community Health and Safety Department. They're all really dedicated to ensuring that our community members and visitors are healthy, safe, and enjoying a really high quality of life here in Santa Fe. We're also really thankful for the input that we get informally and more formally from dedicated residents who volunteer to sit on our 10 boards, committees, and commissions within this large department. We have our Public Safety Committee, our Veterans Advisory Board, our Library Board, 2 boards in our Senior Services Division, our Mayor's Youth Advisory Board, Children and Youth Commission, Human Services Committee, Immigration Committee, and most recently our Women's Commission. Before you'll see a proposed budget combined number with all of these departments of $96,740,000. And that doesn't include, I'm sorry, 96,740,698. It doesn't include our grant carry forward. So this is a really holistic investment by the city in community health and safety. If we think in public health terms, which I do, given my public health background, what we're working to do is improve the crime stats and the quality of life measures like suicide, overdose, physical health, graduation rates, and a plethora of other outcomes. And to do that, we're seeing here in this budget, roughly 35% of our budget devoted to prevention efforts, youth programs, keeping seniors in their homes, giving people the resources they need in our libraries, among many others, and 65% devoted to public safety intervention. And I should say that's not exactly hard math in that within our public safety, we also devote a significant effort to prevention, fire prevention, obviously, and also proactive patrols to prevent crime and case management in the fire department. I want to also say that none of this outward facing work that our first responders, our emergency management team, our library staff, our senior services staff, our recreation and youth and family services staff do every day on the front lines would be possible without our administrative team. And I want to just call out and introduce you to our business operations manager, Manuel Sanchez. Mr. Sanchez is now the single point of contact for human resources, finance, and IT. And he oversees 5 administrative managers and project administrators, which has created a lot of efficiencies throughout the whole community health and safety department. As you can imagine, there are a lot of HR actions, there are a lot of financial transactions, and having this central administrative services unit, if you will, has really allowed everybody who performs that admin work within the community health and safety team support the public safety facing work in a really important way. These are folks that are really behind the scenes, but they take a lot of pride in supporting the department. I often think of it as like the Indy 500 team, you know, the cars are racing around and who are the people that are making sure the cars have the wheels and the fuel and the repairs at the stops. And this is our wonderful admin team. So a real shout out to everybody in the admin team. I also wanted to just call out a few of our accomplishments and some of our goals as a whole department, although the directors and chiefs will speak in more detail about the accomplishments that we're proud of this last year. I wanted to call out in particular the long-awaited teen center for this city. So many people before us, counselors, staff, community members, have worked so hard to make this come to fruition. A really big thanks to the Public Works team for making this beautiful building a reality. And also that we've already begun our hiring process for the manager and the other positions that were approved earlier this year to staff and run that teen center. And we're really excited about the community partnerships that we're forging to make sure that teens in Santa Fe all over the city have a wonderful, safe place to be. I'm also very proud of our Connect program, which launched its partnership with United Way's 211 line earlier this year to give people in the community an even easier access to help. People can also now text to donate to that fund to help their neighbors in need. To date, 9,088 people have been helped with housing stabilization, food, transportation, utilities, and other needs through the Connect program. And a big thanks to the County of Santa Fe. It's an important partner who launched that program, and to our many community partners in this network who make that work possible. I also want to call out the continuation of the innovation during the pandemic that we initiated with non-congregate shelter at Consuelo's Place. During the pandemic, Consuelo's, which is in the dorms at Midtown for now, enabled many, many unsheltered people and others who didn't have the ability to stay at home to quarantine when they had COVID. And that kept our whole community safe. Since January of 22, Consuelo's has served 219 people, many of them families with children. And the staff there have helped to house more than 67 people and kept 7 people from being evicted from their housing. I wanted to call out the amazing program that we launched in partnership with the Santa Fe Community College, the apprenticeship program that trains 60 people to become early child care providers in our community. And that was made possible with our ARPA funds. There's also the launch and the growth with Public Works of the Park Ranger program, which I know you heard about, but this program has really helped create a cleaner, safer neighborhoods throughout the city and in our open spaces. And also these park rangers are very dedicated to helping a lot of unsheltered people connect to services. Chief Moya will talk more about this and with much more expertise than I can, but we're very excited about the addition of our ARF truck at the airport, along with other important vehicles in our fire department. This really is, before I took this role, I had no idea how important vehicles are, but they really, really are. You really can't do the everyday work that it takes to welcome people in our airport, get people to the hospital, and make sure we're able to respond adequately to fires without these really important tools. And these are really important in meeting the safety needs of our residents and travelers. Our fire department's unprecedented support for the city of Las Vegas during last year's fires and the incredible work that the Wildland Division did. I just want to call that out as well. That was an amazing effort, and very, very proud of that whole team. The collaboration between police and fire on our alternative response units, adding another unit, and the good hard work ARU is doing to meet people in crisis with an appropriate response to 911 calls. Finally, I want to echo Mr. Trujillo's points that the fact that we've cut vacancies in police officer positions by almost 50% this year is a wonderful achievement. We are seeing the results and reductions in key areas of crime. So looking ahead to our next year, we want to really think about that 35%, 65% breakdown and invest as much as we possibly can in prevention. We know that if we do this on the front end, in 10 years, our public safety first responders theoretically won't have as much hard work to do. That's the theory of the case. Anyway, it's just a good thing to do. So we're going to do that, and looking for additional grant funding. We're very excited about Cheryl James, who's been an awesome support in our finance department for grants and grant management, as well as giving us sort of wind in our sails to look at grant prospecting, particularly looking for state funding for youth and teen programs, but also an array of opportunities that we think the city can take advantage of in the coming year. We're also looking forward to continuing our Mayors for Guaranteed Income project with the Santa Fe Community College. This is made possible by our ARPA funds that can support 98 parents of young children who are working toward degrees. We're also excited to announce that we'll be doing another evaluation of the Connect program funded by the Department of Health in collaboration with the New Mexico State University that's very interested in looking at Connect as a model for meeting people's housing, food, and other social determinants of health statewide. I think that we're at a point in our department's life where we can use a consolidated strategic plan. And so that's something that we'll be launching in the new year. I say consolidated because many strategic plans and studies have been done in the department. You'll recall the police workforce study that was completed last year, the fire risk assessment and workforce study that's almost complete and will be complete by the end of this fiscal year. And then we're looking as well at doing a strategic planning process on how to grow the alternative response unit. It's been a successful program and there's a lot of demand. We want to make sure that we grow it as intelligently as it was created and has been grown to date. And then we have a community services strategic plan that we really need to do. We already have a seniors and library plan. We need to launch a recreation strategic plan. Where should rec facilities live in our city? Where should they exist? What do they need to thrive and make sure that we're serving everyone? What kinds of facilities do we need? So thinking about all of this, I get excited when we think about this as another way to bring all the efforts that we're undergoing in community health and safety together. Finally, I want to just call out that we will be looking forward to implementing the recommendations of the Community Health and Safety Task Force. And with that, we can go to the next slide. This is our mission. And I think I've described our services in a lot of detail. I know you'll have questions, I imagine you will, about our ARPA funding, so we can get into more detail with that when we get into our community services budget. But with that, I'd like to invite our Community Services Director, Maria Sanchez Tucker, up, as well as the Business Operations Manager, Daniel Sanchez. And we can begin to go over our community services budget. Remember to turn on your microphones and don't turn around.
Thank you, Director Ochoa. Madam Chair and members of the committee, I'm very pleased and honored to present the overview of the fiscal 24 budget for community services. I have the honor to work with amazing directors that lead our community services divisions, and I'd like to ask them to come up and introduce themselves. And we will all be available to answer any questions after the presentation.
Madam Chair and Councilors, I am Brian Stinnett, the Recreation Division Director.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Council. My name is Margaret Neal. I'm the Library Division Director.
Good afternoon, councilors. My name is Julie Sanchez, and I'm the Youth and Family Services Division Director.
Good afternoon. My name is Manuel Sanchez. I'm the not only the Business Operations Manager, but I'm the Interim Senior Services Director.
Thank you all. So the mission of the Community Services Department is to provide a spectrum of activities and resources to support and engage the community as a whole, especially those most in need, creating programs and policies to improve the quality of life for all. And over the past year, I've had the honor to serve in my role as Community Services Director and work with our team to learn about our divisions. I have been able to get a deep sense of our employees and the incredibly hard work they do to positively impact the lives of our community members. Our team ensures that we are connecting the community to the resources they need, contributing to a healthy and well-resourced community. And I am very grateful to each and every one of our employees in our department as they are dedicated to making sure that we continually improve services and provide high quality resources and facilities. Next slide, please. So just an overview, I'd like to thank the finance department for putting together this slide that explains our budget. We have a $33.8 million proposed budget in the community services department. And it reflects a small decrease, but it does not reflect any reduction in services or spending. And the explanation of that is prepared. I've also just wanted to point out that our new funding recommended for fiscal year 24 includes this proposed salary increases and then funding for our upcoming teen center. So in fiscal year, you approved $488,831 to equip and staff the teen center for a portion of this year. And in fiscal year 24, this amount increases to $1,328,303. And this will staff, equip, and operate our beautiful new Santa Fe Teen Center for the full fiscal year. And Kira spoke about this, but I would really like to thank council for your support of the project and all who have contributed to making this project a reality. The Teen Center is a truly one-of-a-kind opportunity to bolster the programs we provide for youth in our city. And with your support and vision, we'll be able to provide a resource for youth that will ensure that teens have a fun, positive place where they have access to programs and resources, are supported, and provide opportunities for personal growth and youth leadership. So, and then the rest of the bullet points just outline continued operations for our divisions. So contracted services, 1.5 million for contracted services for homelessness services, eviction prevention services, and then contracted services for the library and to support our recreation centers. We also have ongoing funding that supports our youth programs, and this is a way that we can make sure that we're providing high quality experiences for the kids that join us for our programs. We are able to provide presenters, hands-on activities, field trips, and transportation. Next slide, please. And as you can see from the department's highlights and the sheer numbers we serve, I'm not going to read all of this because we do so much work, but our staff has been incredibly busy and our employees have been innovative and resourceful in bringing back services to our facilities. Our libraries currently have worked diligently to hire staff in order to ensure that all 3 locations can successfully operate, and they continue to increase programs and service for all ages. We're bringing on a new program manager in senior services that will begin on the 24th, and this manager will restore and oversee the in-home support and respite care programming that so many people in our community need to keep our seniors in our homes. Next slide, please. And then our recreation facilities have been working on creative solutions to solve our lifeguard shortage. We have moved to centralizing aquatic staff to improve scheduling. We implemented the lifeguard training program to train, and we've had 7 successful trainees complete the program. And we have one that's currently completing the program and moving into the lifeguard position, and 4 are currently either enrolled or upcoming. So that has been a success that we are continuing to advocate for and to promote. And our recreation coordinators, they're constantly thinking beyond the ways recreation traditionally serves the community. We've added art to our facilities and we're implementing other fun and creative programs. We have a bike ride that you can take, and you can even rent a bike at our recreation facilities. And then of course, our youth and family division has established a community health and safety program, a violence prevention unit, and they continue to support programs that support unsheltered individuals. Next slide, please. In fiscal year 24, community services will sustain innovation and pursue the following goals. The city's libraries, recreation facilities, and senior centers will continue to expand programs and hours. Our libraries will expand hours in the next few months, and our senior services are back to full service operations, with the last center scheduled to reopen in May. And then our recreation continues to focus on recruiting and training additional staff so that we can continue to add more services. And so within the Public Works Department, we will be working on an environmental and structural study for the feasibility of the Fogelson Library renovation and a plan for Fogelson Library Services and Programs. And we'll also be conducting a study to provide an environmental and historic building assessment of the main library as a first step in completing renovation work on this beloved historic building. We have a lot of big programs, big projects coming up. We're going to be completing the design and planning for a new senior services center in Santa Fe, and then we'll also begin renovations on the Mary Esther Gonzalez Senior Center, making it more ADA accessible and better serve our seniors. So we also will increase our youth program services and outreach, launch the Southside Teen Center, and pursue CYFD funding and other grants to support our youth programs. We're also working with the IT department and the community engagement department to improve our online web presence for our recreation division, key to ensuring that we improve our community service. And recreation is now overseeing the Mayor's Youth Advisory Board in order to provide a committee to support youth-led development of teen policies and programs. And we've successfully added 3 teen nights at the Genoveva Chavez Community Center with 350 teens participating last month, and it continues to grow. And then Youth and Family Services will work to achieve a high quality by name list to reduce chronic homelessness by the end of fiscal year 23 and reduce CRMs for encampments by 75% by the end of fiscal year 24. They will grow sustained advocacy and support services for domestic violence and implement and evaluate a pilot project that recruits, supports, educates, navigates, and employs youth at high risk of violence. And then additionally, our Senior Services Division applied for a New Mexico Grown grant so that we can purchase locally grown food. And our department just continues to look for additional funding, grant opportunities, leveraging resources within our divisions, and continuing to develop community partners in order to support our work. Next slide, please. And just a little bit about some of the examples of the work we share. Our budget directly supports our mission. And Director Ochoa mentioned the library NEA Big Read. That was our second big read that the library held in the fall. And just one story, I attended a talk at the Santa Fe Indian School and I was in line to have my book signed and I overheard a group of teen girls talking. So I asked them what they thought about the program. And they said, this is really a once in a life opportunity for us. He actually spoke our truth. And so they were just excited to hear from an author that looked like them and speaking to them. And so, you know, enriching cultural and opportunities for civic engagement is also what we do. And then the library was also involved in a 5-city pilot project funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services and the Boston Children's Museum to improve how we serve the public and infuse equity in the work we do. And we partnered with the Santa Fe Children's Museum. We were able to implement something like pajama story time and hands-on early literacy kits. And so those are a few examples. And then I just really wanted to quickly mention our amazing youth programs. I don't think they get enough attention or promotion for the work that they do, but we provide high quality, affordable programs that give kids opportunities to swim, skate, go on field trips. And so in summer of 2022, we had age group 6 to 12, we had 515 participants. And we had 65 teen participants participate in our summer camp. And then we offer school closure day camps, which are so important for working parents. We had 351 participants last year. Our winter break camps, we had 295 participants. Our spring break camp, we had 80. And then our after school program continually has 75 participants. So we're providing safe, affordable child care that parents need. And so our Senior Services Division, as we know, we ensure that seniors receive meals, transportation, and we have opportunities for, oops, I didn't move on to the next slide, but we talked about recreation and youth programs, and then the next slide is senior services. Thank you. And, on any given day, seniors receive transportation to medical care. They participate in fun activities that keep them active. We have bingo and ceramics. And we also have senior volunteers that go out and serve the community in schools and organizations. And we've recently added back field trips where recently we had 2 buses go to Chimayo for a visit and lunch, illustrating a fun way to keep our seniors active and healthy. And then our Youth and Family Services Division, I can't say enough about the work they do. Their indirect services directly impact how we serve the public through our direct services. We're incredibly fortunate to have this division to support contracts and research that help to support the direct services and of our larger community health and safety department. It can't be emphasized enough how the services in this division positively impact our citizens through work they do with violence prevention, unsheltered individuals, and making sure that the community has the resources they need. So thank you for hearing about all the work that the community services provides. And we will stand for any questions. Thank you.
So the way we've been doing this is we'll have you go through all the components of the department, and then we'll open it up for questions. So thank you.
Thank you.
So Madam Chair, for clarification, you'd like us to do all the components of the entire Community Health and Safety Department and then stand for questions on
Yes,
departments
yes.
within it. Thank you.
yes.
So we'll invite up our Emergency Management Director, Ryan Williams.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. At the onset, I'd like to take a quick minute and thank my emergency management specialist, Kyle Morgan, who's here. I honestly could not run the operation without him. He's been a godsend. With that, one of the core principles of modern emergency management is the whole community approach. The Department of Community Health and Safety is a manifestation of this principle. Over time, over this last year, we've discovered many opportunities to cross-pollinate our efforts to continue to support the city. Libraries supporting the COVID vaccination and testing, seniors providing frozen meals to fire evacuees, community services supporting the COVID public outreach, many other events that have been worked with us within the department. OEM also works very closely with the police and fire department on a number of special events and, of course, training exercises. As a coordinating entity, OEM is highly reliant upon other city departments. And I want to assure this committee how grateful I am that all of our departments have been very supportive of OEM's mission. We're excited with this year, we're working with Public Works on multiple mitigation grant opportunities, which are currently under review by the state, including microgrids for auxiliary power and stormwater runoff. My focus for OEM for the coming year is to be creative in our efforts to improve our capabilities by engaging in new partnerships and exploiting new grant opportunities.
Thank you. And we'd like to invite our Fire Chief, Brian Moya, up.
Hi, everybody. Madam Chair, members of the committee. I would first like to introduce my 2 assistant chiefs. I would like them to come up and introduce themselves. Also, before they arrive, we also have a brand new operations chief. He started on Monday. So Chief Martinez is on day 4. So.
Madam Chair, councilors, members of the committee, thank you. I'm Freddie Martinez. I'm the Assistant Chief of Operations for the fire department.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Steen Johnson is my name, Assistant Chief of Support Services.
So thank you very much for having me. I would first like to start by talking about some of the accomplishments in FY23. that will make this current budget work for us to improve all the great things I started in my first year as fire chief. We have implemented an academy plan to fill vacancies by having rolling academies twice a year. So by improving our vacancy rate and slowing that down. So we're now actually finishing an academy on May 30th, and we're already starting our next academy on August 1st and ending that on December 23rd. We've also implemented the return of the SET team last summer. It was able to run 540 hours, mostly covering Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays throughout the summer to help with community projects, community engagement, and helping the growing demand of when we have all the people coming in for the summer events. We've had improved in communications with my direction. With my direction, I've removed 4-man pumpers, and we have added additional ambulance when staffing has been allowed. We also have added a brush truck to the staffing levels to help with the growing demand in District 7, where they continue to have that growing demand of calls for Engine 7. That unit is running about 45 calls in 48-hour period. And by us adding another unit to that district, it is helping the call volume go down for that engine to be able to respond with one ambulance and not the other. We've also were able to secure $250,000 to upgrade the security throughout the fire department and every fire station. We haven't had that in over 20 years. So we've included cameras, badge entry. So every station now will have access to when we know somebody shows up to the station. Half of the project will be completed in June, and the rest of the project will be completed next fiscal year through IT's budget. We have implemented a new software that will help better track our community members when they get these calls. We're able to have better data showing the improvements throughout many areas with the EMS division and throughout the community. We have successfully integrated 6 lateral hires that has helped us bring firefighter paramedics where we don't have to send them off for a year of training. We were able to bring in lateral hires just like PD has. We've included 3 firefighters also in the last year. We have expanded Code Blue hours. We've implemented better ways of when we have Code Blue to make sure that the people are getting better services. I have designed over the last 2 Code Blue nights to include every engine going out on designated hours and showing them where they can go and giving out cold weather packs. We have, to Director Ochoa's point, we have actually ordered, as of the end of this May 30th, we will have 2 ARF trucks on order, and we are hopeful that they will be here by May of next year. And that will continuously help the growing demand at the airport. So we will move forward in that area. This last fiscal year or this current year, we were able to replace all of our life packs. Those have been in the service for over 20 years, and we were able to replace every single one of them. That was over a $300,000 investment that we did last fiscal year. We've also, in the coming months, we've had an engine, a rescue, and a med. The Med 6 was put in service about a month ago. Engine 1 and Rescue 3, that they have been placed on order for over 2 years. We are also placing them in service at the end of this fiscal year. We've also, with Director Ochoa's continued support of the fire department, we are finishing a risk assessment that will really help drive the future of the Santa Fe Fire Department way into the future. I would also like to then start my slide presentation. Is that fine? Okay, thank you. Some of the improvements that we've been able to do is this next fiscal year through the State Fire Fund, we're able to purchase, in this slide was done before I was able to finish it, but we're able to purchase 3 new ambulances. So over the last 3.5 years, we'll have all of our new ambulances purchased. So per our vendor and per this slide, we are able to replace 3 more ambulances by hopefully May of next year. We've also implemented the new software. That's where the $347,000 comes from. $183,000 is going to our medical medical director, our pharmacist, and our PSPG contract that we've been showing across the board where it will help with mental health within the fire department. Next slide, please, and I'll explain on this slide here. $128,000 every year goes to our continuing services of EMS licensures. So every single person in the fire department is an EMT. So we continue to help with making sure that they have their licensure, their background checks. Every new hire in the fire department has a psychological examination done. So we make sure that they're properly prepared. My next bullet point is going to be a little more, and I'll explain. After the budget was proceeded, an error was discovered. Within my budget, I was able to procure 4 new positions within my budget. 3 of these positions are coming into the wildland division. They're forestry technicians. So we have taken a look at our history of hiring temporary employees over the last 3 years, and it's been a very big decline due to not wanting them to work seasonal jobs due to the economy. So we have reallocated our temporary salary money into 3 full-time forestry technicians, and that will help us do better wildland care all year round. So that division will go from 9 employees total. So we will not have temporary employees anymore, but we will have full-time coverage for better service throughout the year by doing this. And the main drive behind this was due to the fact that we're just not getting the employees to apply. This year alone, we were only able to hire 4 and were able to hire 6. And within 2 weeks of the hiring process, 2 had dropped out of the process. So we are only hiring 4 this fiscal year or this summer period. We were also able to hard fund a behavioral health director position. That was due to we have a behavioral health director under contract, and we're moving that to a hard funded position. And what that is going to help us do is better manage what the ARU is doing. And it will also help us with other contractual areas like PSPG. It will make us a little better looking at other contracts. We have a physical done by the fire department every year, and we're looking into a behavioral mental health aspect within that division. So this 4 positions were created within my budget, and we are trying to put our money where we need it the most. And that is why we continue to improve these positions. And we also, I was here when COVID came, and we had some professional contracts that were technically could be erased. And by us hard funding behavioral health director position, the fire department is making sure that we are hard funding the ARU and the MIHO division long-term. And that is the direction of me and Director Ochoa. Next slide, please. We've implemented the new software Image Trend that is better tracking. That started of August of last year. That has been a great, tremendous improvement to our patient reporting. So when we go to the hospital, they're better tracking. We're actually able to track if it was on every call, if it was a homeless person or not. So we're getting better data over the last 12 months by August, it'll be 12 months of data to show what we're doing compared to our old system. So this is the state of our system. This is also what the county uses. So it's easy for us to look at patient care reports across different departments too. So if we've run on this patient multiple times, the paramedic or the firefighter can pull the call up and see multiple calls within the Image Trend system. We've launched the second ARU unit. We have had some lateral movement within that division, so it has been running good, but we've also had to scale it back a little bit just due to the fact that we had EMS captain transfer over to another EMS division. So I'll explain that later on. We were able to hire 10 people for the class, 3-5 and 3 laterals hires. We've also realized that within that hiring process, we've had to promote the fire department. It is getting harder to promote to work in public safety. This last academy, we were only able to hire 55, but actually to our good efforts with our social media accounts, We still have 4 weeks to go and we've already have 80 applicants for the next academy with 12 vacancies. So I feel a lot better about how we're doing our branding of the department and how we're bringing back resources. I've already mentioned the ARF trucks, and then something that I'm very proud of, especially with our lobbyist and our union, is we were able to obtain 3.9 million from the state to start addressing Fire Station 2 and able to fund that. So that's a great accomplishment, and I will give all the credit to our lobbyist and to our union for them going down to legislature for the first 3 months of the year and obtaining that capital money to start us to get that station built. Next slide, please. Some of our goals and our highlights into our next FY24 budget. I built this slide way back, and it's creating a behavioral health director position, and we were able to do that already. Address paramedic retention. A lot of what we've seen by me adding on an extra ambulance every day is we're letting all these we're now, that would be 8 ambulances per day. We're letting they're not having to run as many calls. We're able to spread the call volume out. And it's not a specific. About a year ago, some people asked me, well, why don't we add just a specific ambulance just for airport transports? So, a flight crew comes in and does that. And I've said, anybody can do that job. So why not just take an extra ambulance, eight a day, and make sure that they're helping every other ambulance run calls and make sure we get that across the board. So we're able to try to help with paramedic retention. I have some other ideas, and we're trying to that is a very important position within the fire department, and we want to make sure we're taking care of that group especially. Another goal is conducting class 3-6. That will be starting in August and ending on December 23rd. We're going to be finishing our community risk assessment. We'll be bringing it to you guys in the governing body here in May. We're also working with Assistant Chief Johnson on creating case manager career ladder. We know that's very important in the RU, so we're trying to improve their work in that area and making sure that we can see growth. So it's not just they become a case manager and don't move forward. And then continuing our good fight to get the remaining money to build Fire Station 2 in the coming year. Next slide, please. So a lot of what I'm going to share in these next few slides is just what each division is within the fire department. So fire admin has 7 people in the POL. That's who work in that division. That is the leadership of the Santa Fe Fire Department. That's who live in that division. Next slide, please. The fire operations, that is what Chief Martinez runs. That is, to say bluntly, that's our 48-hour employees. So everybody that lives in fire operations are 40-hour employees. And also included in that is our 7 current wildland employees. They report to Chief Martinez. Next slide, please. Our next one is our support services division. That is led by Chief Johnson. We have a fleet division, and within our fleet division, they're responsible for every fire truck, ARF vehicle. That is a very important division. Our fleet manager has to be certified very specifically to take care of all these specialized equipment we have. So we have 3 people that work in that division. Next slide, please. Our training division is run by a battalion chief level position. There are 5 people in that division. They're responsible for making sure that everybody within that division keeps their EMT license, make sure they have all their fire training, and making sure that everybody is up to par across the department, and making sure that their continuing education is appropriately taken care of. Next slide, please. We have within the department, I don't know if everybody realizes, we have a health and safety division. And what that does is that's an interfacing division. And what that does is that person takes care of the people within the fire department. And so he takes care of their annual physicals. He makes sure that their bunker gear is washed after every fire to prevent cancer prevention. He is also there to make sure that if somebody gets injured on the job, he follows up with that division and makes sure they're taken care of. So that when it says health and safety, that's an internal facing, and they make sure that the department employees are being taken care of. They're also in charge of currently making sure PSPG, the contract, is being renewed every year. Fire prevention is our next slide. That division is a very big division. In the last budget cycle, we were able to expand that division. We were able to also include in the budget last year a division where we could have fire prevention employee do community outreach. That was a big part of what I implemented last year. And this employee was able to take a lot of the calls in and making sure that we have one point of contact for the fire department for a birthday, drive-by to every special event. We have over 75 to 80 special events a year that this person manages, just from a football standby that we need an ambulance to anything else. So we've expanded the fire prevention division. That is a very important division within the fire department, within the city. That is why we don't see a lot of fires in the city, is because this division really goes out there and making sure everything is appropriately taken care of. Next slide, please. The last two divisions, the last year we were able to combine with PD an IT division. So IT has a division that directly supports what the fire department does. We have MDTs, we have computers on every unit that helps us respond to calls, lets us know when we're going to a call, where the address is, what's going on that address. And that's a lot of IT support. Without IT, we don't have that kind of support. And our last division, it's a big division. It has 14 people in it. It manages all EMS operations within the fire department. It has 2 battalion chiefs that work in that division, and they kind of control what the paramedics do, and they also control what the ARU and MIH does. So it is a very big division. It does a lot of great work in the community, and it makes everything better.
Thank you, Chief. And our last presenter. Our last presenter will be Paul Joy, our police chief.
Here. All right, am I coming through okay? I'm usually either too close or too far away, so I want to make sure I'm gauged out right. So my name is Paul Joy. I'm the Chief of Police for the Santa Fe Police Department. Want to first and foremost say thank you to the Finance Department for putting this stuff together for us, and the presentations and all the work that they've done and heavy lifting. Also, I'm going to say it now, and I'll reiterate and kind of explain further on as to kind of what it really meant. But I wanted to say thank you and I echo the thoughts and the sentiment made by Union President Trujillo about the work and the support and the approval that this committee and the governing body and mayor and city manager all put forward last year's budget to really get us to where we are today. My first year in chief, personal thank you and professional for helping me to have the tools and resources to really bring us forward. And we've done a lot of good work this past year, and look forward to explaining that. So this is my first time doing a presentation and budget presentation in person. So that's also, of course, very exciting. And I'll start off on script, and as we get in a little further on, I'll kind of give some details and talk about what some of the numbers mean and what the information is. But the mission of the Santa Fe Police Department is to provide Santa Fe residents and guests with a safe environment in which to live, work, and visit through professional services and quality policing. The department endeavors to foster open communication, mutual respect, absolute trust, integrity, and justice within our community by working together to prevent, reduce, and combat crime and illegal activity. The police department is responsible for preserving peace, responding to law enforcement calls for service, and of course, protecting life and property within the city limits. This is a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, 365-day a year operation. Our what people typically associate with police, our patrol officers. They are our most kind of forward-facing representative of the departments. Their shifts encompass 3 shifts that are overlapping that cover the 24-hour period of the day. Real quick, just to give you guys a little bit of insight of kind of where we are, and we don't track data by fiscal year, we track by calendar year. So a lot of what I'll talk about is from calendar year of 2022 and kind of what we're dealing with. But so for 2022, our agency responded to 76,878 total calls for service. Of that, 16,129, roughly 21%, were self-initiated proactive measures by our staff. Again, 21%, with 59,693 being 911 calls, non-emergency calls, general calls for service. Go back. Comparing that also to 2021, we had 74,031, and in 2020 we had 82,581. So in 3-year total, just from the last 3 years, we have almost 250,000 calls for service for the city of Santa Fe so far. Looking at this year, calendar year in 2023, in January, I think we're busier this year, to summarize it, but in January, we had 6,966, so 6,966 calls, which is 32% increase over 2022. In February, we had 6,273, which is a 21% increase over 21% increase over 2022. And in March, things are getting warmer, things are getting more active. We had 6,819 total calls for service, which is 44% more than what we saw in March of 2022. So going back to the presentation, this year's recommended budget totals $36.2 million. It's a decrease of $4.2 million or 10.4% from last year's fiscal year budget. This decrease is attributed to expenses carried forward from fiscal year 22 into 23 for ongoing department initiatives, as well as one-time expenses that were approved to be funded for 2023 from 2022. The Department's general fund recommended budget decreased by $827,233 or 2.5% from fiscal year 23 budgeted levels. And again, this was due to a significant increase in one-time expenses that were added to the fiscal year 23's budget. Included in this year's budget is the 3% increase for members making under $100,000 a year, and the 1% increase for those making over $100,000. And again, our union and our department, our members are very appreciative of that. The also included in this year's budget is a $2,261,117 for the purchase of police vehicles and associated equipment. I should say next slide. Sorry, Nadia. Maybe not. Anyway, I'll catch up to you. The $556,000 for incarceration and care of city inmates at the Santa Fe County Detention Center, the contract there. $244,000 in animal services section for the housing and care of impounded animals at the Santa Fe Animal Shelter, and the $100,000 in contracted services for the city's false alarm reporting program. And just related to that, it's also in City Ordinance 20-5 that goes specific to the false alarm reporting program. So department highlights. And again, the second one is the big one for me, but the first one, we created the first ever sergeant certification course as an internal course, a comprehensive deep dive into employee matters, critical incident management, supervisor liability and duties, employee administrative investigations, and other crucial topics. So far, we're at an 84% completion rate throughout the department. Now that includes sergeants and also senior officers and detectives. So not just technical or what would be considered our actual supervisors, but people who are also placed in leadership positions by the nature of their position and seniority within the department. We do expect to have the rest of the department who are eligible for that class to be completed by the end of the calendar year. We're going to have another class, I believe in June, with another 23 attendees that are expected. And we're also including the animal services supervisor in that. And so why this is important, this was a pet project of Deputy Chief Champlin. Myself and basically all of my command staff, lieutenant and above, we had throughout our time taken kind of like general supervision courses through various other like private classes. But we've never, a lot of what we've done has been kind of learning by doing or watching our supervisors kind of helping guide us through it. But there was no real, this is what's expected of you in our department to be a leader and supervisor in our department. And so this was a passion project for DC Champlin to get this off the ground and work with his staff to make sure that our staff and our officers and our future leaders of the department are have all the tools that they need from us to do the job that we ask them to do every day. And now the second one gets kind of in my opinion, this is where I go back to that initial thank you to the committee and the governing body, where I feel like this statement should be bolded and underlined, maybe throw some glitter on it. Like it really doesn't say enough of the impact that it's made for our department with regard to our staffing. So when we've been able to increase the minimum staffing within a patrol section, it says to 66, but things evolve obviously since the budget has been submitted. And so we're actually up to 67. This is excluding supervisors. This accounted for increasing the minimum number of officers available to respond to a daily call for service, as well as addressing the average attrition rate of 5%. And Director Ochoa referenced it briefly with regard to the matrix study that was done, the workforce study, where their recommendation was to make sure to try to account for that 5% attrition rate. And so we've done that in these numbers. And we've also been able to account for the 6 promotional transfers. Also going back to the numbers. So when we had this conversation a year ago, we were right about 34 vacancies. And shortly after that, we hit a peak of 38 vacancies. We are, as of Monday, we got the gentleman hired, he's starting on Monday, we'll be at 19 vacancies. So we're half of what we were at our peak last year. And I want to also say a big thank you to the Human Resources Department for all the work that they've done, where we've gotten these folks in the door, we've run them through the process, but it's really been their heavy lifting to get them some pretty quickly through the door that we've been able to get them out and trained and out to the street. We have 6 cadets in the academy currently. They're expected to graduate in June. We will be hiring, we're anticipating hiring 5 more cadets that will start in June. They'll go to the academy in July, as well as 1 more lateral that is expected to hire in the next couple of months. So 6 more employees, 6 more officers, sworn officers that we'll have by June 31st. Another number, because again, these numbers fluctuate and change since they were initially submitted. But in 2022, our homicide rate of clearance is actually 87.5%. And why the 0.5 is because we had 8 total homicides in the city of Santa Fe, and we've solved 7 and closed out 7. There's 1 that's still active and our guys are still working. Another important one in 2022, our first real post-COVID Zozobra also happened to be our largest Zozobra to date with attendance. We had 71,089 attendees for this past year's Zozobra, and we had 0 reported criminal incidents and 0 motor vehicle crashes with leaving the venue. And that is, again, a lot of the heavy lifting of our support operations, which we've been able to better staff and equip because we've been able to increase our staffing. So as we've been able to build and bring in more officers and sworn positions, we've been able to fill up the vacancies in our support operations as well as our criminal investigations sections, which it's made a big impact on the services that we're able to provide to the city as a whole. In 2021, our special victims unit generated a 33% solvability rate. In 2022, the solvability rate went up to 54%. Similarly, with property crimes in 2021, solvability rate was 35%. And in 2022, solvability rate was up to 43%, which again is above the national average of 19% for these types of crimes. In fiscal year 2024, so I'm going to jump over to the goals. One of our goals is to reduce the number of motor vehicle thefts by at least 15% in 2023. In order to accomplish this goal, we've done a number of things internally to help support the property crime section or the property crimes unit in this measure. To include, we've added staffing, we've shifted some staffing. We've also moved detectives and sergeants in the intel unit, which is a proactive unit that we're able to utilize to assist in some of these other operations and assist with fugitive apprehension. And so one operation that we've done so far is the operation Caught in 60 Seconds, which saw a reduction month to month of motor vehicle theft by 40% during the time of that operation. And hopefully, as you have seen so far, and you'll continue to see as we're able to better staff and equip our patrol and our support operations and criminal investigation sections, you'll see more operations being advertised and discussed with the public. Some you'll see more after the fact, where we just give the results of what we did. But we've been fortunate that we've been able to do more operations and in this coming year continue that trend. We continue on with goals. Maintain an effective clearance rate above the national average of 61.6% homicide cases. To accomplish this goal, the Violent Crimes Unit is tasked with attending more advanced training and maintaining the high-level communication with the DA's office and maintaining organized and thorough case files. Also, to complete the ongoing update, this is a multi-year project we've been working on, and this has been DC Valdez's passion project, and he takes very personally to heart and has been very active in getting this going up to speed and getting our department where it should be with evidence management, with our processes and policies and the infrastructure. And his goal, our goal, to obtain accreditation through the International Association of Property and Evidence. And again, in maintaining the progress that we've made and sustaining that progress from the previous year, remaining competitive in pay and benefits for foreign and civilian staff in order to help retain our talented professional personnel and attract additional talent to join our department. And it's been said before, and it's very true, the officers that we have on our team in our department, they are our best recruiters and representatives. And a lot of the laterals that we've been able to attract and onboard are here because of word of mouth, because they have friends with our department or they know people in our department. One lateral has a friend who's not even in the department anymore, but he had nothing but good things to say about us and encourage him to come on board with us. So I'll take this opportunity to introduce my deputy chiefs, where I talk about what they do in their division or their sections.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and councilors. Matthew Champlin. I'm the Deputy Chief overseeing the operations.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and councilors. I'm Deputy Chief Valdez and I'm over administration.
So. oh,
I do.
Going to intermission.
We're done. Please observe. Object.
All fixed. Thank you.
Yeah, I just need the screen where I can see the Zoom boxes.
Madam Chair and councilors, I can see the Zoom on my screen and it looks like Councilor Villarreal is still there. Let me get the TV in the
Yeah,
chamber.
it's just helpful if I can see it. So if she raises her hand, I can,
Absolutely. We will get that back on.
okay. I think we can proceed. They'll figure out the screen issue. And in the meantime, Director Oster, if you just monitor that for me.
Certainly, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll start a little bit out of order. I'll start with the police operations division, Matt Champlin's division. Those are the men and women that you typically associate with police when you think of police. They're the ones that are out on the street, handling calls for service, investigating crimes, doing the proactive traffic enforcement. So that is all the folks that you see every day responding to calls for service and calls for 911 assistance. And again, we're at 169 total positions, and we currently have 19 vacancies for our sworn positions. The other side of the house, the police administration, they are the ones that do really all the work behind the scenes and get very little of the credit to help our folks out on the street do the job that they do. So our training, recruiting, police community relations, our records, our administrative staff and budget personnel, that all falls under administrative services. But with that, go to the next. All right, and I'm done.
Thank you, Chief Joy. And with that, we'll stand for questions for the Community Health and Safety Department.
Terrific. I do see the screen now, the Zoom screen. What we don't have on the other screen is just the slides if we end up referring to them. So just FYI, I can look at my packet on PrimeGov for the slides, but we wanted to refer to them for the public. I don't think we have that ability. Yeah, but I hate that because then I can't see the audience. Okay, just tilt a little. There you go. There you go. That's fine. All right. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties in the chamber. Thank you for that presentation and thank you to your staff for their work and for giving us a kind of thumbnail sketch on what you've been doing and where you're going. And we'll now go to questions from the committee. Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just so you know, and the committee knows, Solid Waste Management Agency moved their meeting up to 4 o'clock because we're finally going live. So I will have that hard stop myself. So you know.
Okay, and it is 2:30. I'm hoping we can I mean, we've got a little over an hour. Hopefully we can get through this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Ochoa, on the first page of our budget book, which is 51 for your department, it still has the 38 vacancies for police department. I heard him say that, but that was from last year.
This, Madam Chair, Council Rivera, that includes sworn and non-sworn positions. So as Chief Joy mentioned, there are 19 vacancies currently in our sworn positions, and the remainder are in our unsworn in the administrative side, support services side.
And then how many in the non-sworn?
In the non-sworn, currently there are 17.
So there's still the same amount of vacancies. The overall number.
I'm sorry, 17 for non-sworn and 19 for sworn. So a total of 36 vacancies currently.
All right, I thought that was all sworn, so thank you for that.
And Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, if I could just interject, sorry. That is one of those numbers, the number of vacancies, particularly in a large department like police, that number is constantly in fluid, a fluid state, you know, from day to day, the number of vacancies may go up or down. So that is one of those numbers that's really just a snapshot in time. And depending on when you take that snapshot, the number may change the next day.
So we had the 750,000 for first responder mortgage assistance. Do we know how much of that has been expended?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I'm not aware of what's been expended there. I'd have to ask Director Alexandra Ladd and the HR department. I believe most of there was a presentation given on that program. I believe most of the folks are still in the pipeline for those funds, and I don't believe much at all has been expended. Maybe Director Oster can speak to that.
Yeah, I think Director Oster can speak to that.
Certainly, Madam Chair and Councilor Rivera, we plan to expend 150,000 in the current fiscal year FY23, and then carry forward the 600,000 and add an additional 150,000 to that to provide a total of 750,000 in FY24 for the budget for that program. And as Director Ochoa mentioned, there's quite a bit of process involved with purchasing a home. So my understanding is that there are several dozen folks from police and fire who have expressed interest and are at various stages of, you know, looking for homes and working with HomeWise, which is the mortgage servicer that we're working with on that program. So Director Ladd can certainly provide a lot more detail, but my understanding is that we're hoping to have a number of closings between now and the end of the calendar year.
Yeah, she mentioned some of that, but I don't think had the hard numbers for it. So thank you. My next question is for Ms. Tucker. On page 52, it says 1.5 million for homelessness services. Does this include the new SOS discussions that we're having? Is this part of that budget?
Counselor, Madam Chair and Councilor Rivera, that it does not.
Okay,
And
so this is.
Ask,
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I can also speak to that, just for convenience. So of that, we have 600,000 for the continuation of non-congregate shelter. And the remainder comes out of our Human Services Committee funding. And that goes substantially toward homeless services out of that fund.
Just in general, or?
So shelters in particular, primarily, and other projects related to ending unsheltered homelessness.
Okay. So you sent an email, Ms. Tucker, about the staffing for the teen center. Can you just explain that again so that the public can hear and understand? Initially, we thought there were going to be 20 positions, but I think you clarified that. So if you can do that.
corrected there. Thank you, Madam Chair and Councilor Rivera. Yes, we have 10 full-time positions allocated to the operations of the teen center. It's going to be a 17,000 square foot facility. And we have one manager and 2 supervisors allocated to overseeing the site. And we are proposing 60 operating hours, Schedule 2 to be determined, but based on weekends, evenings, and times when youth need the program. And so in order to fully staff those operating hours, cover programming, cover ensuring that we have safety and security for our teens and our staff, we would utilize the staff to make sure that we cover all of those hours, including breaks and leave and overlapping schedules.
All right, so the employees that were at the Carlos Ortega Teen Center have been absorbed by GCC.
Correct. During the reorganization, when recreation moved into community health and safety, our youth program, city youth program, moved into being operated out of the recreation division, and our current staff that oversee our after-school program and summer programs currently are housed at the recreation division.
So if any of them wanted to move over to the new teen center, they'd have to apply, I assume.
Yes, they would apply.
1 million for eviction prevention services. Can you tell me how much of that we've spent?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I'll invite Ms. Julie Sanchez, Youth and Family Services Division.
Let me ask Ms. Tucker one more question then before we do that. You mentioned lifeguards. Will we have enough to fund our 4 pools without disruption of service to any of the one?
We are continuing, Madam Chair and Councilor Rivera, we are continuing to recruit. We have several trainees in the pipeline. We're hoping to hire more lifeguards. We're probably going to have staggered schedules at our pools, trying to ensure that we have the most operating hours as possible with the staff that we have. But we still do have quite a few lifeguard positions that we will need to staff for temporary positions this summer to make sure that we're operating all 4 pools.
What's the greatest difficulty, I guess, that you have in, what's the biggest challenge you have in bringing lifeguards over?
I'd like to ask Director Stinnett if he would come up and answer that question. He's working directly with the aquatics team, and I think just one of the reasons is the teens and folks that used to staff lifeguard positions are very busy, and it's difficult. But I will also ask Director Stinnett to weigh in.
Yes, thank you, Director Sanchez Tucker and Madam Chair and Council. I would see our biggest hurdle to overcome for filling the aquatics positions are their entry-level positions. We're not receiving the same type of high school youth response coming in to apply for these positions. There's also competitive salaries that we're dealing with. A lot of our competitors for that youth population are working at other locations that are paying a slightly higher rate than what our entry-level lifeguard positions are. And then we've seen a steep decline in certified or capable swimmers that have to come in to meet the initial demands of passing those physical portions of becoming a certified lifeguard. So those are probably our 3 biggest hurdles that we are challenged to overcome.
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, if I may add that this team has done a lot of very innovative work in terms of working closely with HR to develop different levels of the lifeguard training. So if you look currently in our advertised job positions, as I invite any interested candidate who might be listening to do, you'll see a number of different categories. Brian, could you explain that?
Yes, we have a total of 4 different categories throughout the lifeguard positions. With the implementation of the trainee program, we've been able to capture some additional applicants. So that's our beginning level. We have full-time lifeguards, part-time lifeguards, water safety instructor, and then recreation supervisors. So those are our levels in the aquatics division.
And may I just add, Madam Chair and Councilor Rivera, that we are also looking at training more staff within our facilities so that they are trained in our emergency action plan, and so they can respond if we are short-staffed, and so that it would assist us at this time where everyone within the building is trained for any sort of emergency action. So we're thinking of other ways as well to make sure that we're staffing adequately.
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, the other innovation this year was to create the aquatics program manager position that oversees all bodies of water and all staffing, and that creates better efficiencies in terms of staffing folks at different facilities as needed.
Thank you. May I ask Ms. Sanchez about the eviction prevention?
Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera. If you could please repeat the question one more time.
We have $1 million for eviction prevention services. How much of that has been expended?
So thank you for the question. So currently, the funding is actually being, the contract is going through our legal right now in order for it to become fully executed.
So we haven't spent any of that million?
No, the funding has not been expended at this time.
And that's for this past fiscal year.
That's correct.
So we're anticipating we'll need the other $1 million for the upcoming year because that's what we think we're gonna need and we haven't really had a chance to try it out yet.
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, that's correct. It's not, the eviction prevention fund is not a budget increase in FY24 because it's currently in our FY23 budget. During Director Ladd's presentation, she was also speaking about her eviction funds that were managed through her office. Similar to them, we have not expended ours because we're working on getting the program up and running. And actually, I would really love to work with Director Ladd's office to see how we can coordinate using the eviction funds as part of the eviction hotline.
I assume this is just carryover then from fiscal year 22.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera and Ms. Sanchez, if I could add, we're really at the finish line with this contract. It's been a little challenging in that it's innovative. And I think legal has had a lot of questions. The group that, has been dispersing the funds, that same group that helped us disperse, I think it was $3 million in CARES funds in 6 weeks, is, working with this contract. And so it's really quite feasible that once it's executed, we'll see those funds move very quickly. And I would anticipate that while I don't know that we'd spend $1 million before the end of this fiscal year, we'd be happy to come back to this body and let you know how much we did expend before the end of the fiscal year. Because I don't think all of it would be carried, and I don't think it would be carried over. It would just be repeated, essentially. Is that right, Director Oster?
Madam Chair, I'm going to look to my budget team to see if this is funding. Did we add additional funds to this for FY24?
Yeah, and I would just add, is this an example of one of those where we're taking whatever the increment that gets spent this fiscal year and making it whole again? So it's the whole.
Madam Chair, that we, in consultation with staff, it did not look like anything was going to get, probably much was going to get spent this year. So we, I hesitate to use the word carry forward because we use that as for a specific thing, but we reappropriated the entire amount for FY24, given that it was, the program was just, getting off the ground and not really, progressing too far, it looked like in 23. Yeah.
So, Mr. Hopkins, you're saying we have $1 million to spend before June 30th and then another $1 million for fiscal year 24?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, technically that's correct, although I would be completely gobsmacked if we managed to spend $1 million before.
Yeah,
that.
I don't think we'll do that. And I think Director Ochoa said that would probably be difficult to do, but just trying to understand it.
But technically, yes. I mean, if Julie really got out of her checkbook in a big way, then yes, she could technically spend $1 million in 23.
I've known Julie for a little bit. I don't put it past her.
But if I could, Councilor Rivera, that leaves the impression that we're going to put, you know, let's say Julie's magic powers happen and she's able to spend a large chunk of that $1 million, that would suggest that we're putting $1 million plus into eviction prevention services between this fiscal year and next fiscal year. Is that what you're saying? I thought what we're saying is we're reappropriating the money if we don't want to use carryover, which I know we've struggled with in these hearings about, and identifying what is real new money in this budget versus what's just taken a while. Some of these programs have taken a while to get off the ground, and we're reappropriating, if that's the word you want to use, the money that's in this fiscal year over to the next fiscal year. I just think it's getting a little confusing here. Maybe you can.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that's essentially correct. For this in this particular case and in some other cases, because the program was, you know, we were having some teething problems getting it off the ground. We just repeated the same appropriation, knowing that, you know, in 24, this is really going to get off the ground. And so we will be, you know, coming at least closer to that $1 million mark in 24, whereas in 23, probably by the time, you know, we're already in late April, by the time we get to June 30th, probably very little will effectively be spent on this, although Julie might be able to give more detail on how much we anticipate this year.
Let's say they're able to spend 250,000, then do they have to carry over the remaining amount? Put a request in to carry forward, or?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, they could do that, but given that there's $1 million already budgeted in FY 24, I don't anticipate they would need to.
So where would that 750,000 go?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, that would revert to fund balance.
Thank you. I had a question for.
And Counselor, you're kind of close to your limit, so I know you have another meeting, but we should probably move on here soon.
All right, well, I'm not going to get through the first round then, so I'll just ask a quick question for Mr. Williams. Can you just explain what the first bullet on page 60 says, which is to access and functional needs communication kits to support individuals with communications needs? What is that?
So this year we were approached by the Mayor's Committee on Disabilities, and this was an initiative that they really had their heart set on. These kits are a set of tools to enable individuals who are working with individuals with access and functional needs. For example, if we were to open a shelter, we would have a kit there. It has tools to help individuals who have hearing problems. There's a translation tool. There's some vision support tools. So it's a combination of a variety of tools to support individuals with access and functional needs.
All right, thank you. When you're talking about communication needs with public safety, I start thinking about other radios. And
no, it's not radios. It's specifically tools to help individuals with hearing and vision issues.
All right, I have more questions for fire chief and police chief, but I'll do that on the second round.
Okay, why don't you go ahead, Councilor Lindell says she doesn't have very much. So, and again, I know, what time do you have to leave, Councilor? Because your meeting moved?
I think it's just at the county building, so 15 minutes to walk over.
Okay, and that meeting starts at, I'm sorry, I forgot what time you said.
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock, okay, great.
Chief Moya, you said the SET team, is that the special events team? All right, I didn't, just want to make sure SET meant that. 540,000 for purchase of 2 ambulances and other departments. That comes from your state fire fund?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, yes, sir.
So it's grant monies.
Grant monies.
Are you receiving any money from GRT or through the regular process for any vehicles?
We do not receive any money through GRT. The only thing we've done is the ARF truck last year. That is the first time the city's purchased a
Okay, that was a big purchase.
big purchase.
That one was over 1 million, I believe.
The first truck was 1.2. The second truck we were able to do with James Williams, the airport manager, and that was 1.4. So we're at 2.5 million total, that will be, these two trucks will come in at.
Okay. At the bottom of page 63, it says, obtain the remaining capital funding for fire station number 2. Do we have a plan for that?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, what we put there was hopefully it'll be city's #1 priority in the legislative process next year, and hopefully we'll be able to go back and ask for a big chunk of that money in the 30-day session.
Are we gonna try to at least spend what's been given to us so far with infrastructure and other things that can be done so that we at least show that we're expending that funding they gave us?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I think I'd have to defer that question to Director Wheeler. I don't have that answer.
Okay. You talked about the ARU and 2 units now. Do you know what the hours of operation are and the number of calls per unit?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, we are running it 4 days a week on 410s. If I could have Assistant Chief Johnson come up, and I think he could give me a little better answer than I can.
Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, running 4 days a week with ARU, and they're running, if you look at the numbers, they're running about 11 calls per day. I'll say that is moving pretty fast for the crews. They're spending an hour, sometimes a couple hours on each scene, trying to navigate an individual's needs.
And what are the hours of operation?
8 o'clock to 6 o'clock.
Right. And I think Chief Moya said there was some staffing things with the second unit, or are we pretty consistent with both units every day?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, we've had some movement with EMS captains in that division. And so we're currently, we've got still 1 EMS captain full-time there. And the other truck is being substituted by EMS Captain Applewhite, and on occasion then also Battalion Chief Mercado is filling in on those days too.
Okay, good. Chief, I want to talk about firefighter retention and hiring. I know I still get information about fire throughout the state and throughout the nation. So I know Los Alamos is hiring, and I know they pay significantly more, I think, than probably most of the departments in the state. So have you heard anything about our firefighters looking into that? Are they looking at a lateral class, which clearly is popular with us? So,
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I will be completely honest. I've had one actually reach out to me to let me know that he applied. The fire department is very good at rumors. We've heard multiple others, but I'm kind of holding that back until we actually see something in writing to me. But I think with our new strategy and our plan with our 6-month academies, we've seen a difference. I think Chief Martinez would attest to this, that our staffing is good. We're able to, handle those people that call in sick, the people on annual leave. We have to account for those on a day-to-day basis. But due to our 10 that will be graduating on May 30th, we're at a total in the field 13 operational vacancies. So we know, I brought this up in last year's budget hearings. We do have a lot of big classes that are eligible to retire. Our class 2-2 is eligible next April. So when we were hiring back when I started 20 years ago and Chief Martinez started right after that, we were hiring 20. You were part of this. We were hiring big classes. So we need to just know that moving.
Don't blame me, Chief.
we were hiring big classes, so we're trying to prepare ourselves for this big exodus of people that are eligible to retire. You know, they might not want to, but it's up to them, and I want to support them if they're ready to retire. But I think that is something with this 6-month academy strategy is we don't let them get to those 20 vacancies. We don't wait till we hit that number. We hit 8 in the fall. I'm pushing the button with the academy for 8 in the fall. So I think we continue to do that. I also know that with these new ARF trucks, we have to look at the expansion of the airport and the operations out there due to the increase of flights and due to our index changing. If we get these big trucks, I mean, we haven't had anything pressing or anything in this magnitude in a very long time. But I was meeting with him this week, and the airport manager is super excited. I think he's all told everybody that we are having flights that are maxed out every day out there. And so it is just growing and exponentially moving forward.
You talked about paramedics earlier. I assume ARU is staffed with paramedics as well as a 911 operation. So they're clearly very valuable employees. How are we doing staffing with those?
So we've improved tremendously. I think a lot of what we've done is we have not put a cap on sending people to paramedic school. We actually have 4 graduating from UNM at the beginning of May. We have 1 at the community college that will be graduating shortly after. We also are continuing to support new people to going. That is my number 1 priority with Chief Johnson to put as top line in our budget when we need to send people to paramedic school. That's our number 1 priority. We're not putting a limit on that until Chief Martinez tells me we can't handle staffing levels. We are willing to send, I think, another total of 6 for next, in this coming year, 4 more to UNM and 2 more to the community college. So we're continuing to see that rate. We have 1 that will be promoted here in the coming months, 1 paramedic. So we're not seeing that big influx of paramedics promoting out yet. So we're continuing to fill from the base, but like I said earlier, it is a big commitment on behalf of the fire department. We send these people to go away for a year to go to school. It's a big commitment on us. It's a big commitment to their families that they're disappearing for a whole year and they come back with this great knowledge to help out the community. So it was a concern, but I think the way we've strategized, we're not putting a cap on it. We're not putting a limit on how many people actually go to paramedic school. If everybody passes the classes, passes UNM's test, the community college's tests, we're approving them to go as long as we don't see any red flags.
And you talked about your recruit classes being or having about 80 applicants when it used to be significantly higher. What are you doing to try to ensure that the process is as flexible as possible?
So when Chief Babcock was here, he had a diversity committee do a lot of information that gathered to him. I took one of those specifically, and we've added, we've changed the course. When I was in the training division, we got a nationally certified course done. So we have it certified through a company out of California. So it protects and makes sure it's validated. It's a validated course. We've also implemented, if Chief Johnson, will you correct me on this one? IFPAT course. So it's another way of them being able to go take it if they can't take, or they don't want to take ours. We from our hire date, they can go 6 months and get this certificate. It's mostly done in Albuquerque. It's done on a machine. They're able to improve that way. We've also been doing great on orientation sessions. Chief Rizzo has been letting them practice during the morning sessions on Saturdays. I don't know if you've seen them on our Facebook or Instagram pages. And then they get to test out at the end of the day. So if they pass, they don't have to take it when they go apply for us. We give them a certificate and they can use that. So we don't put that extra stress on them moving forward. One other thing that we did last year was we were able to, when we were really close to the written test, we took a percentage. It was on me and the HR director, and we talked about it, and we were able to, if you pass by 1 point, we actually let them retake the test again. So we're trying everything we can to improve our numbers, and I will say, and it's coming from experience for me, when I took it, it was like, you failed, well, we'll see you in a year. And I don't think we need to do that anymore. We need to prove to these people that we want them here, and we're going to do everything we can to get them across, get them through the hiring process.
You said if they passed by 1 point, but I think if they failed by 1 point.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Rivera.
All right. Do you want me to keep going? I just have a couple questions for police.
Yeah, that's okay. You've been going for quite a while, but I'll give you 2 more questions.
Chief Joy, on page 69, the 2 bullets for I shouldn't say bullets to a police chief, but the bulleted items.
Bulleted ride.
556,000 and 244,000 for inmates and animal services. Has that increased, or has that been the same amount for a couple of years?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, that is flat from last year as well.
Okay. And we're really especially with county detention center inmates, really it's the county that dictates those rates, right? So they just haven't changed them in a while.
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, that is a negotiation that DC Valdez leads on our behalf with the county jail.
Great. And then just, you had mentioned something about 250,000 calls for this year.
That, no, over the last 3 years, 233.
All right, thanks. That makes a big difference, because I was trying to do the math with 7,000 a month and where the extra stuff came from, but that makes a lot of sense. That's all I had, Chief. So if just wanted, I know we'd given direction previously to the Economic Development Director, Rich Brown, about some things that we wanted in his budget. And I think there is a significant amount of money, I think, for retention, for public safety, retention and hiring bonuses, I think is what it was. And I would just like to ask 703,000, Director Ochoa, if you make sure that, if anything, that's split evenly between the 2 departments. And if it looks like one department may need more than the other, which in this case, to me, I think looks like fire may be in a little more dire need than PD, that you would look at that, but that at least it remain even between the 2.
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I think I need to defer to City Manager and Director Oster on that question, because I believe that has been budgeted already in.
And if we need to wait for Director Oster to return,
particular
we
budget.
can keep going and come back. But
Madam Chair, Councilor, I think we could do that. And I actually walked in halfway through the question as well.
Yeah.
So let's wait for her to come back. All right, Councilor.
Well, it says for both police or for public safety is what it says. So you said it's already been budgeted into.
I wouldn't like to answer that incorrectly, so I'd like Director Oster to speak.
And Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, for us and our incentives, we have 119,000. Half of that 75,000 is for the first half of 10 laterals, because we pay half upon hire, and then we pay the other half after they complete a year. And so the half is for 10 laterals, and then the rest of that for us goes towards other contractual incentives.
Okay, so that 700, and I think we better wait for.
yeah, and what page are you looking at?
Page 9 at the bottom of the page.
Okay, it looks like they're huddling over something back there. So let's come back to that. That's okay.
And there's some emails being exchanged now between the county and the city about the actual start time of the meeting. So I'll let you know.
Okay, sorry about that. We did do our best to try to work around the other obligations members of this committee have. So my apologies. Other questions from the committee? Councilor Lindell.
Thank you, Chair. I thank you, Councilor Rivera, for being so thorough. It makes my job very easy right now. About incentives, I've had conversations and about our lifeguards and our pools. It's really hard to see our facilities not being used to their greatest capacity because we don't have lifeguards and because we don't pay quite enough. I did see a week or 10 days ago in the newspaper that Albuquerque is giving bonuses to lifeguards for this, just summer employees for whether it's high school or college people that are coming to be lifeguards. And I would way rather be paying somebody a $5,000 bonus over the course of a 3 to 4 month employment than to see these pools be closed. I mean, we can't be talking about a lot of money to do that. Why can't we do that? Is it just plain budgetary that we didn't budget for that? Well, I mean, I think $50,000 would go a long way.
Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, I'll take that for Director Ochoa. I think last year, was the first year that I know that Director Oster and Director Sanchez Tucker worked with us about trying to provide some incentives over the summer. At the time, we were giving full-time employees $1,000 a year as a retention bonus. Is that correct? And so there was a consideration about equity in terms of whether or not a person who's working for the city, even in an important role like a lifeguard, should be given an equal amount to someone who's working 40 hours a week for the entire year. And so I think, we would need to follow back up with Director Oster and with the HR director, but I think your point is well taken about how a little bit more money for incentives for lifeguards could go a long way to keep these multi-million-dollar properties open and functioning.
Well, the council gets elected to make hard decisions, and if folks are uncomfortable doing that internally, bring those things to the council and we can make hard decisions. But I do think that to have multi-million-dollar facilities not being used because we're paying $2 less an hour to somebody than someplace else is, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I hate to not see our kids having a place to swim. I mean, we got one outdoor pool in this town. We spent almost $1 million last year getting it back up to speed and renovating it. Let's get that pool in as much use as we possibly can. Kids have a great time splashing each other all summer long. I hope that we would think about that and bring something. Let's get those pools going. The other thing that I have that it just piggybacks a little bit on Councilor Rivera, and otherwise he covered everything I was going to ask about, is I am concerned about our eviction program. I don't need a specific answer on it. I'm just throwing it out there that I have some concern. I mean, at one point in time, it was brought to us that we were going to have 5,000 to 7,000 evictions. I haven't seen that. I don't know if that was just faulty data or what the situation is. Thankfully, we didn't. But I'm not sure if we've re-geared our finances to a much, much smaller number of evictions than what were brought to us and what was predicted. Because I don't know the number, but I certainly don't think that we had anywhere near 5,000 to 7,000 evictions in this town.
Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, if I may speak to that, I think on evictions has been a challenge. I think, there are multiple sources from that data. What we're doing this year with our eviction prevention funding is we're running it through our Connect program. And so all of the navigators, we have over 225 navigators in the city and county, and over 60 programs have direct relationships with clients, many of whom we know anecdotally are experiencing extreme housing insecurity. So we're confident that those funds will go to use. My goal would be to gobsmack Andy and spend as much of those funds this year as soon as that contract is executed. I think we'll find there's a huge need in this area in our city. Unfortunately, we're challenged by the data, but we're very happy, as I mentioned, to bring back our report on what we do expend this year, as well as going forward. I think we'll get a better handle on that than we could in the past while the pandemic was going, and it was sort of a all hands on deck way of addressing the issue. But we can give you and the council better data as we go forward, because we do have it running through the Connect program this time.
I appreciate that. I will just comment that I was never comfortable with 7,000 number in a city of 84,000 people. And I mean, that would have been it would have been a double-digit percentage of people that were evicted. It never made any sense to me, that number, considering that typically there's more than one person in a household. If you're talking about a population of 84,000, to say that you're going to have 7,000 separate evictions, those numbers never added up for me. And I don't think that they thankfully did come to fruition, because we would have had a mammoth percentage of eviction in this town. So I will yield the floor, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. I'm going to go back to Director Oster and the question that Councilor Rivera raised. Director, you may need a moment to find this information. So I thought I'd just, on the bottom of page 9 of the budget book, it talks about $703,000 for hiring and retention incentives for first responders and fire and police departments. And I'll let Councilor Rivera weigh in here, but I think he was asking how that money is being divided between those two departments. And I don't know if you want to elaborate, and wanting to provide some direction. And then there was some indication that perhaps that money has already been divided. So Councilor Rivera, I'll let you fill that in a little bit.
Yeah, similar to the direction we gave to Rich Brown, and he said he could just take care of it, is just to make sure that that 703,000 is at the very least split evenly between the two public safety departments mentioned in the bulleted part.
And if you need to look into that, we can go back to you, Director.
Madam Chair and Councilor, I do need a minute to look into that. Let me talk with budget team and we can circle back on that question. So the question is, how is the 703,000 divided between police and fire? Because they are two separate departmental budgets. So I will, it looks like Andy's coming to the mic right now. Maybe he has the answer.
Do you need a minute? All right.
Okay.
We'll circle back. We're going to go to other questions from the council. Councilor Cassett.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'll try to be as quick as possible. Starting with community services. I just want to call you Maria, and I'm trying to be more formal. Director Sanchez Tucker, Sanchez Tucker. I was Sanchez at the end. You were before. Okay. We had discussed about the RSVP program and how there used to be funding for individuals to be able to buy the materials to go do the assistance. And apparently that funding disappeared over the last couple of years. Were either of you able to figure out where that funding was and restore it?
Refer to,
Oh, your mic is on. You didn't sound.
Sorry.
There you
I will
go.
refer to Manuel Sanchez. Thank you.
Chair, Counselor. The funding is still we're still working with the budget department, or not budget, but budget and the grants department to find the funding. It was some monies that was transferred back over, so we're still working with them to identify where it's at and get it rebudgeted.
Okay, wonderful, because it sounded like that was a key component, and we want to make sure that that is there so people can continue to provide those services. Thank you. I'm glad you're looking into it, and I'll follow up with you in a couple of weeks.
Madam Chair and Counselor Cassett, we will update you as we find out how we can determine if we can fund that program.
Wonderful. Thank you. So one thing I'm still trying to figure out is that relationship between, we have the park rangers and the community services park rangers. Do they perform different duties? I'm still trying to understand this split and why they're not all in one department or another.
Madam Chair, I'll also invite Julie Sanchez up to get into some detail on that. Essentially, they perform the exact same role. They're under the same leadership team. It's an interesting evolution of why that is. We do ultimately imagine that they will all be in the Parks Department, but the community services influence, and really Ms. Sanchez's influence, has been around the training and the linkage to other service providers in the community, so that they're not just going out, not to say just on that, that's a tough job. They're not only going out and, telling people they can't camp and clearing encampments. They're very much connected to the service provision network. Ms. Sanchez, would you like to elaborate on that, and when we see those positions potentially migrating to parks?
Madam Chair, Counselor Cassett. So we anticipate the program migrating full-time to the Parks Department once the superintendent position has been filled. We will still continue to be a large partner in that work because of all the training and all the resources that we bring from outside agencies. But yet our plan over the next couple of months is to fully transition it to the Parks Department.
Okay. Okay. So same job and we'll merge, but you'll still be involved in the training, which is always a good thing in my book. Thank you. We talked about this. We talked about this. Recreation, moving to the update in the online platform. How is that going to impact online scheduling specifically, again, for the pools? Or will it affect online scheduling?
I'll ask Director Studette to come forward.
Thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair, and Councilor Cassett, we are working with the City Communications Department to sunset our multitude of recreation platforms into the santafe.gov website that was just launched in January. We're producing all of the information so that there's one landing page and ensuring that all the linkages for registration, for swim lesson and recreation swim signups are all going to be active and produced in that new site. Additionally, we're working on building and implementing a new platform with IT, and that platform will then sunset what we are currently using for all those registration services and enhance what we're trying to build for recreation team, as well as registrations and everything for public use.
Okay. Just a little feedback from what I've heard from the community. As you know, I'm very plugged into the whole network of mothers with young kids for obvious reasons. I know that the scheduling has been a challenge, and I know that there have been parents who have shown up to GCCC or to Bicentennial with their 4-year-old, and then they weren't able to swim. And that just ruins the rest of the day. And so I'm curious if we've come up with better solutions for this. Are people able to book in advance? Are they able to, I suppose that you can do walk-ups. I don't know if there's an ability to almost do a real time of whether or not the pool has slots or not. And I'm sure that these are things that would take time to build out. But I think getting some feedback from the community about, and perhaps you've already done this, what would really be beneficial in those rec sign-up programs and how that would better allow people to access the pools. I know sometimes I have people say, I would go to the pool, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get in. And honestly, that's just not, a tantrum that I want to experience today. So have you guys been doing any of that public outreach?
Yes, right now, with our limitations on our platform, we are using essentially a sign-up process, but it still requires a payment in person as you're coming into the recreation center. That's been a main focus for us for upgrading our platform so that people that are signing up can pay and purchase online, which guarantees their spot, which eliminates that dual sign up and then come in and pay. There's a communication piece with it that a new platform will allow us to eliminate those problems and headaches going forward.
And Madam Chair and Councillor Cassett, I believe that we have been able to increase the number of slots available based on lifeguard availability. And so I know the recreation team has been working diligently to find ways to ensure that we have more slots open when people do come, because there's nothing worse than coming, being excited, ready to swim, and then being turned away. And so we are putting every effort into making sure that that experience isn't happening and that we can increase the availability. And that includes, as Director Ochoa talked about, centralizing our aquatics operations. So we have a holistic, bigger view of scheduling needs, and we can assign lifeguards where they're needed. So it's still a work in process, but Director Stinnett has really been focused on making sure that we're improving those experiences for our customers as they come through the door, and that we can utilize our staff to the most efficient means possible.
Thank you. I appreciate that. While you're up there, swimming lessons in the summer year round. I know this has been a frequent conversation. Are we going to be able to provide the city provided swimming lessons? I know that there's a contractor, I think, operating out of South P right now. But will we be doing the bicentennial program again?
Yes, Madam Chair and Councilor Cassidy, we are in the process of planning and revamping our registration process for summer swim lessons. We want to capture as many as we possibly can. The new aquatics manager position is also working with the recreation team on developing that process and also looking for ways to enhance the amount of slots that we have available. But we need that accurate data of how many requests we have coming in. So we're looking to launch that in the middle of May, have that registration process mirror what we do for our youth programs, fill the slots that we have at the beginning of the summer, and then create a list that we can then try to enhance additional learn to swim programs with the hiring of lifeguards that are coming on board. But right now it's a moving target as we get our positions filled. And then we want to fill additional WSI positions from our current lifeguard positions so that we can offer more throughout the summer.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. And glad that you guys are really using that data and trying to gather all that information. Thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't just say thank you for the youth programs. Again, I hear from a lot of parents, especially those like random school closures that grown-ups do not get spring break. And so that has been extremely helpful for the community. So I really just want to thank you all for that and really recognize that. And I know I've heard really good feedback from the community. Thank you. Let's go ahead and move on so I don't take up too much time. Move over to fire department, please. Hi, Chief. So Councilor Rivera already started discussing the ARU, and as you know, as you've heard, this is one of those programs that I'm very interested in looking to expand and how we continue to do that. I really am curious. I mean, part of the piece with the ARU is not just that you have individuals that are specifically trained to deal with certain scenarios, but also that there's the hope that it starts to provide some relief on other areas of operation that maybe are not going to be the appropriate staff, both police or fire, to address these. And kind of similar to the conversation we were having about the SOSs last night, sometimes I get concerned that the dose is not high enough for us to really see a difference. But I would like to know, one, are we starting to see how that impacts on the hours that the ARU is available? And when you are doing that risk assessment, will that also really take into consideration the ARU and when there potentially needs to be some shifting in staffing and what units are on at what times?
Madam Chair, Counselor Cassett. Yeah, so question one, we kind of have a measurement. We know it's helping PD a lot. We know that it is helping those calls that are depending a lot on their screen. We know I even get phone calls. Can ARU go here? ARU can go there. So I think we're continuing to evaluate that. It's really hard to see on the fire side how it's looking just because they're picking off calls at such an early stage on the CAD. So at a very early age, they're looking at the call, they're seeing it's available and they're picking it off, and it might have got to fire. It might not have got to fire. That's kind of where we're still trying to evaluate that. The second question is, with our study, we are taking a deep dive into that. We are hoping this will come out and give us really good direction moving forward of what we need to do with this division and how we need to move forward. So it's just a work in progress right now. I will be completely honest. It's one part of the fire department, and that is the part that scares me the most. Me being the chief is I have 8 other divisions. So when we all sit up here and talk about how great ARU is doing, we have to worry about everybody else too. And I think that's the scary part that for me is we can't always put the money always one location when we are neglecting the other parts of the fire department in that aspect of, perfect example, ARF next year. We're going to have to do something to deal with these brand new trucks that are coming. And if we want to expand the airport, we're going to have to put more resources in other areas within the fire department too. That is my biggest concern is it's just a balancing act for me as the chief.
Right. And that's why the question really comes down to, what is the impact on the other operations, both in fire and police? Because I know that that was a big piece of this, is how does this actually impact resources in other areas? How does it impact burnout? So that's why I was hoping to see that this is being looked at what the impact is on those call volumes and who's responding and what this really means for the department as a whole.
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett, if I could add, we do know that, as Chief Moya says, and from Chief Joy, that PD really appreciates ARU, and ARU team tracks, when they may have diverted a call the PD would have had to go to. The Fitch and Associates study, we'd had an initial conversation with them about our questions around the ARU, and they were very helpful in, identifying that this unit grew out of the MIH program, the Mobile Integrated Health Program, which was initially intended to impact high utilization of 911 and did so very effectively. But they, being familiar with a number of programs around the country, sort of laid out the need to do a deep dive into strategic planning. What does the city really want this unit to do? It can't be all things to everyone, just as police can't be social workers and firefighters can't be social workers, but they are often. So I'm really looking forward to the coming year, because I think we'll have good initial but initial direction from the overall study of the fire department, which, as Chief Moya says, looks at the need for growth in the fire department as a whole, the overall resources, and then looks at ARU in the context of what the city and the council and the leadership would like this to be. One thing that ARU has been uncovering, for example, is the acute needs of seniors in our community who are living in isolation and experiencing dementia. That alone could take up, quite a lot of growth. Or we could look at ARU as essentially assistance for people in behavioral health crisis in the field, which would relieve pressure as it's doing on PD, or, we can't try to be all things to everyone. And it also goes along with funding sources, because as we look at how to grow it, we want to look at what are sustainable funding sources for case management. We know that Medicaid is a sustainable funding source for case management. We know that other communities have utilized these kinds of teams in partnership with their hospital systems, which are seeing tremendous benefit in terms of their readmissions, for example. So as we look at how to grow it, we want to just do it very consciously. We know it's been successful. We want to, make sure that we understand how we're going to grow it and why we're going to grow it and with what funding sources.
Okay, thank you for that. And then the new behavioral director, I'm not seeing a new FTE listed in the, why not? Please explain where this position and this FTE is coming from.
Madam Chair, Counselor Cassett, I would maybe have defer this to the budget team, just to make sure we're on the same page. I think we're gonna have to do
Madam Chair and councilors and Chief Director Ochoa, we're working on the mechanics for that. So in regards to the 4 additional positions that the fire department would like to add to the wildland unit. So we're in the process of working on the mechanics of how that will be proposed.
Okay, so in the end, in our fun little, where is it? Matrix of where it tells us about new positions, eventually will it be added, 4 new FTEs or that they're transitioning? Will you guys eventually explain to us where these are showing up from?
Yes, absolutely. Madam Chair and Councilor Cassett, we will. I think likely this is going to be an amendment.
Okay.
So we'll consider those next week.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Other Chief Joy. Thank you. This was my first in-person budget hearing too. So you're right. It is very exciting, although a little bit harder to sit in the chairs when I'm not at home, being able to stretch. So downside to that. Couple quick questions. You mentioned that you were busier this year. I would hazard a guess. I do not have data that this might have to do with the changing dynamics of the pandemic and people just being out more. Do you think that that's part of what's going on?
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett, it would be an anecdote on my part, but I think it's a reasonable, it's as reasonable of a reason as any other. I think, again, 2022 was kind of the first year that we really saw people starting to branch out post-COVID, and 2023, I think we're going to start, just based on what we've seen so far, we're going to see kind of really the numbers that we were seeing pre-pandemic.
Okay. And the reason I asked that question is if it is more pandemic related, I'm curious how this impacts the results of the workforce study that we just did for PD that was really providing a lot of insight on shift and number of officers that we needed. So
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett, so what we did with Matrix was we did have them review data from before the pandemic to make that assessment for the future for us.
Great job. Way to think ahead. Thank you for that. So animal control is something that I get a lot of calls about, especially the fact that there's not animal control after hours. Is that correct? And not on the weekends? Am I understanding that accurately?
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett, they do have an on-call rotation.
Okay.
So they do have on-call hours for animal services.
Okay, well, something to talk about with RECC is I've had a lot of individuals tell me that when they've called the non-emergency number for animal issues after hours, looking at City Manager Blair, because I'm guessing this might be something you have to deal with, that they're being told that there's just not an option after hours and that they'll have to wait for Monday morning. So glad to know there's something on call. And sounds like that message is not getting through to the public, because I've had a number of people tell me this. So,
And Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett, they do have a it would depend on the call. So if it's like a running at large, just a dog that's running through the neighborhood, it's likely that animal services would not come out for that.
okay.
I mean, for a number of reasons, whether or not we're paying them overtime to come out, and whether or not the animal's still going to be there. Sometimes what we will do is we'll send an officer to go see and see if they can attempt to locate and see if the animal is in fact out there or what's going on. And then they'll check with their supervisor and get clearance to call out animal services for it.
I see. But if there's more of a dangerous situation, there should be something.
Then,
on call.
right, if there's if it's a dangerous animal or we've got like a severely injured animal, something along those lines, we would expect animal services to respond.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Madam Chair, Councilor, can I interject real quick as well? Since you asked the question about the RECC, I want to flag a couple things. One of which is, and we need to do a better job of this, is we want to make sure that the public understands that the city doesn't run the RECC. It is run by the county. We do have a JPA,
Can you give the alphabet soup for RECC?
Regional Emergency Command Center.
Regional Emergency Communication Center. 90% there.
And maybe what the R.
The shorthand is it's. the nine-
What,
it's the
who do they
911.
do? Yeah, okay, thank you.
So when folks call 911, they're not calling the city, they're calling the RECC, which is the 911 center. It is a joint powers agreement that established the RECC, and so it covers the county, the city of Santa Fe, and Edgewood right now. And I want to flag that we've really been working this year for the city in the last calendar year, fiscal year, to engage in a higher way. And so this year, we were in a position that the RECC board was able to review the budget proposal for the RECC. And at the urging of city staff, the RECC board did vote to ask that the county provide raises to all RECC employees. They have a very large vacancy rate. They have a really extraordinary new director named Roberto Lujan, who's really doing all he can to try to make sure that we have 24-hour excellent service. But so where the city's leaning on as hard as it can within the bounds of appropriateness to really see the RECC be built out. But we just want to remind anyone who's listening, and for anyone who is a grass top who can repeat this to their friends, neighbors, and constituents, that when they call 911, it's not the city.
And that's also the non-emergency line as well, correct? That goes to RECC.
Yes, the nodding heads tell me that is correct. Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett, just following up on animal services. You didn't ask, but just for your information, 7% roughly of our total call volume for 2022 of 5,724 were directly for animal services.
Wow. Okay. All right. A lot of animals around. Thank you. There's a 81 or 87.1% increase in insurance in the police department budget. Does that have to do with increased staffing?
I will defer that to Ms. Bowen.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. That comes from the evaluation that they do based on our risk assessment. It's an increase in our police liability and some of our benefit assessment.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that I'm probably at time. Yeah. All right, I'm at time. I will yield the floor. Thank you.
Sorry, it's hard to be the timekeeper. You did. Everybody's being very considerate of each other. Okay, Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wishing I could be there with you all. Can you hear me okay?
An issue because I can't hear you. Your box
Can
is
you hear me
light.
now?
Try again.
How about now? How about if I cough?
SOS, ITT, we cannot hear her.
Counselor, if you can hold 1 minute while we try to get a resolution real fast, okay?
And while we are paused, the retention amount, they are doing some research and they will get back to us. It's probably going to be a next meeting.
How about now?
There you are.
Right.
There you are. Wahoo.
The screens are really funky on Zoom, just so you know. I'm not even gonna.
How much?
Try not to look at myself. There's like these multiple screens on top of each other. Okay, that's better. Thank you.
Yeah, they were funky in the chamber too, but they've just resumed.
Great. Sorry I can't be with you all. I'm rounding the corner of the sickness and still very mucosa, and just didn't want to subject my colleagues to that. So I'm on Zoom again. Just have a few questions. I think I'll start with PD, since you're there, Chief Joy. And congrats on a great article in the paper. I thought it was a good highlight of the department. So congratulations on that. I think I was really just wanting to look at some of the bullet points. and just make sure I understand all of them. The one piece about the police vehicles and associated equipment, that 2.2, around 2.2 million, is that an additional amount to what we've already approved in recent mid-year requests, or is this an additional, or is this something that we've already appropriated? I couldn't figure that out because we're kind of going back and forth with some of the amounts that we've already appropriated. Is that a new request?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, I'm going to defer that to DC Valdez, make sure I'm speaking appropriately.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, that amount is our regularly allocated amount for each year. It is not an increase to the amount that we're allocated each year. And that amount is for approximately 30 vehicles for us to purchase.
So that's on what we appropriated mid-year. There were some requests from that had bars. Is that was for another set of vehicles?
Yes, Councilor.
Okay, good. Thank you. And then just a reminder, remind us what the city's false alarm reporting program is again, that we have an amount of funded that it's contracted services. I couldn't remember that.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, and I mentioned it briefly. It's in the city ordinance 20-5. That it goes a little bit into the history of the how and why and what it's for. But we do contract. We work with Fry Wolf as the company to monitor and seek reimbursement for false alarms. And just again, going through for 2022, we have 3 different alarm categories. I don't know where to look for you so I can see. But,
I'm here. I see you.
All right. That's the important thing. So we have 3 different alarm categories. We have just regular alarm, and then we have business alarm, and then residential alarm. And so regular alarm is 156 in and of itself. It wouldn't seem like a lot, but that can cover a lot of different variations of what alarm would be. But we had 3,005 business alarms, and we had 1,764 residential alarms. So if you exclude the 156, we have 4,769 alarms. So 6% of all calls for service for 2022 for us have been responding to alarm calls. And in the ordinance, it highlights that roughly 99% of those calls, generally speaking, are false alarm. And so in order to seek reimbursement for those false alarms, the city put forward this program.
So you all get reimbursed for making responding to a call that are not necessarily legitimate, or they're false because the alarms went off and they weren't supposed to, or because people are making, like people are part of the false alarms. I'm not quite sure I understand that.
So there are a number of reasons that can cause a false alarm. If we have a windy day, generally speaking, or a stormy day, we sometimes expect a higher call volume of alarms, but it could be a dog that tripped off a motion alarm. There's a number of things that can cause a false alarm, but like I said, roughly 99% of those that we get end up not being a true alarm.
Wow, that's a lot.
I think the key thing here, these are security systems in the businesses and residents, and I don't know what a regular one is, but because it seems like business and residential or cover the gamut.
And Madam Chair, that's why I just kind of eliminated the 156 to 156. It could be overlap with some of the other two, but the main ones were the business alarm and the residential alarm call.
Right. So security systems that have false alarms, which police respond to, this program helps recoup some of that money. Is another way to say it.
Was
Back
that
to
a
you,
nod?
Councilwoman.
I can't see. I see you now, Counselor.
And just wanted to verify, but that money doesn't go directly back to the PD. It goes back into the general fund for the fees that are recouped.
Okay. Goes back into the general fund, huh? All right. Thank you for that. So just talking about staffing, and you talked about increasing the minimum officer staffing and the percentages, and I think that's a good sign. I think the retention bonuses, incentives have helped. I'm curious, out of the new officers and laterals for this year, how many were women?
Madam Chair, Councilman Villarreal, I can give you an overall of the account for the PD and then a breakdown kind of by unit. If you'll allow me a minute to frantically go through my notes, make sure I have them right. So of the department as a whole for sworn personnel, about 13% are female. So 20 females out of the sworn staff that we have so far. But what's an interesting breakdown that I thought was when you go by unit, so roughly 10% of our patrol section are female. About 27% of our criminal investigation section are female. All of our crime scene techs are female. And we have 2 sergeants that are female, and we have our number 1 of our current sergeant test is also a female. And we have 1 female lieutenant. So of the new hires, I don't have that number directly, but kind of generally speaking, that's the breakdown of female to male in the department.
Thank you. And let's see, I think I'll move on to, I think that's all I have for PD, and I'll move on to fire. If Chief Moya could join me or see you in the front. Thank you. I think my colleagues touched upon some of the things that I was interested in. And then I'm still trying to, I know ARU, there's complexities there that we don't understand. And I agree with my colleague, Councilwoman Cassett, about looking at how ways ARU is actually offsetting or having impacts in other departments. And I guess we still need to, that remains to be seen, to kind of see what that looks like for the fire department. I think what I was trying to understand is in the budget book, it talks about launching a second ARU unit. And when you were talking about the first ARU unit, it's 4 days, 8 to 6. And then that second unit, as it says in the book, is really only two days. So really, if we're looking at these units, they're almost really just covering one week need, more or less the needs of 1 week, because it's 4 days. And then the second unit is covering 2 days. So in a way, it's almost like one unit, wouldn't you say, that's covering the needs that we have for an entire week?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I agree with you. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess I just want to be clear about that, because maybe we should just say it's like one unit and it's expanding the needs that we have for ARU instead of saying, oh, it's a second unit. Maybe there's another way to describe that.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, we did have 2 units up and running, but due to some lateral movements of one of the EMS captains and one of the other EMS captains choosing to report to a different supervisor. So within that division, we have 4 EMS captains assigned to 2 different battalion chiefs. When one vacancy comes through tuition, we ask the other 3 if they would like to change, either work on the ARU or work for the EMS division within Mike Suber. So 2 specific EMS captains are specifically assigned to ARU. Captain Applewhite has always been able to jump on the unit when in need. And then Chief Mercado has also been part of that, where is in the really bad situations where there is nobody else, Chief Mercado is getting on and doing a great job and jumping on as needed. So it is just due to our lateral movement. One of our EMS captains left that position. So right now we have 1 vacancy in that division, and we are currently advertising and that should be closing at the end of the week. So It's just due to staffing. It comes down to staffing with an EMS captain on that unit.
Okay, I hope we can get back up to speed where we need to be, because when you're saying 11 calls per day, and they're not just quick calls, that's a lot, that's a long day for folks on that team. And it will be interesting to see what the risk assessment study is gonna say, and where are we with that in terms of timeline for that to be completed and actually presented to us?
Madam Chair and Councilor Villarreal, we had a meeting with them this week. We still feel confident that we could probably have it by, in my opinion, the end of June. They're trying to finalize it and make sure it's all correct before they present it to me and Director Ochoa, and then we would present it to you guys. So they're just making sure it's all done correctly and making sure they have all the data they need before they finalize that and present that to us.
Great, thank you. I'm looking forward to that. And Director Ochoa was talking about the, what did you call it? You called it the strategic consolidated plan, right?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, yes.
And I like your, the way you're looking at it, kind of combining pieces of different other plans. And I think that makes sense to try to put it all together so that it's cohesive and consistent. And then I hope also when we get to that point with the task force, with the Community Health and Safety Task Force, that will also kind of lend to informing your strategic consolidated plan as well. Do you see that as a connection as well?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, absolutely. We really look forward to that final report and input. And I think the timing will work well as we have that to incorporate in the overall consolidated strategic plan for the department.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Looking forward to that. And then same question for you about gender balance in the department. Chief Moya, you were talking about hiring 10 trainees, 6 laterals. And I was curious how many of those were women.
Madam Chair, one of the laterals was female. We did have 11 apply in this last academy. We had 6 not pass the written. We had 3 not pass the physical portion. And then we had 3 other ones not get through the final stages. That could be anything from a background check to a psychological evaluation to the interview process. So we are getting a little better numbers. It is still not up to par in the fact that we have 2 currently in operations. We have 2 in support. And then we do have 5 case managers that are females and all of our secretaries. But currently in operations, if you just break it down, it is 2. We have a captain and a paramedic.
A captain and a paramedic, you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And then just to make sure I understand about the new position, you just notified us about you said in the presentation, it said on your slide, behavioral health specialist. Did you mean director, or is that synonymous for you all? Is director and specialist the same and the same level?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, we have been going back and forth with that. We are going to finalize his behavioral health director position. That position, would you like more detail into that position?
Please, that would be great.
That position has been part of the fire department for the last 5 years as a contracted position. We are now moving due to the fact we were able to make this a hard funded position. Me and Director Ochoa have done a lot of thought going back and forth on how this can better prepare us into the future and make us better prepared for long-term growth. I always go back to recession times, and when we get rid of things is in contractual employees. So by us hard funding behavioral health director position, I think it'll set us up for the future. I think it'll also show that the city of Santa Fe is committed towards this unit long-term, and we're trying to make it a long-term in direction moving forward. And it'll also give us more freedom to do more things with that position. With a contract employee, they kind of have to stay in their scope of work. Now with it being in the division, we can add, more tasks to that thing. It can supervise people. This current position could not supervise people as a contracted employee. So it just opens us up for, in my opinion, we're investing in the program. And if I could do it now, why not do it now?
Yeah, I think that's great that this will become a permanent director position. And I think we're on track. I mean, that has made sense. And even with our presentations that have been given to the task force about this, that was one of the suggestions of things that would help to support, looking at behavioral health in a different way through your department. But it also, like you said, it definitely confirms that this is a priority. So I look forward to that, and whatever adjustment we need to makes, I'm supportive of that. Let's see, I think that's all I have for fire. Let me double check. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you, Chief. And as for community services, I just want to double check some numbers. The contracted homelessness services, I wasn't quite sure what you all meant at when you said this at the beginning. So the 1.5, you said 600,000 of that was for continuing non-congregate shelter support. And then is any of that 1.5 the ARPA, or is ARPA separate and this is a whole nother separate budget that's a new funding request?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, none of the funding is new. And it is not ARPA. It is all city money. However, 600,000 is from the general fund, and I believe the remainder is for the Human Services Committee, which funds homeless services and part of its funding cycle.
Got it. Okay, so the rest of it, minus the 600,000 you're talking about, the rest is for the grant support for services that we work with, service providers.
Councilwoman Villarreal, correct.
Okay, thank you for that. And then going back to eviction, the eviction piece. I was trying to, I think finance said that we have these two buckets, right? We have the 1 million that's in play that's for this fiscal year and it hasn't been spent down. And then there's an additional 1 million. And
Councilwoman, if I could just stop there, this is the confusion I'm trying to eliminate. It's not 2 million. So if we could have Director Oster again help us understand this.
Certainly, Madam Chair. So we have 1 million that was appropriated for the current fiscal year, FY23. And any amount of that is unspent will revert back to the general fund, because this is, a general fund program. And then in the FY24 budget, we've included $1 million. So in effect, what that means is the program could spend up to 1 million between now and June 30th, and then still have 1 million available to spend in FY24. However, any that doesn't get spent from FY23 will go towards funding the FY24 portion.
anything that doesn't get spent in FY23 will go into FY24. Say that last part, that last.
Right,
sentence.
Councilor Villarreal. So the FY23 budget for this program is the $1 million, and they have 1 million available to spend. And we're also proposing to budget 1 million for FY24. If the entire 1 million doesn't get spent in FY23, then the unspent portion will go towards the FY24.
Funding the FY24. And I think it's anticipated that not very much of the 1 million already budgeted for this year is going to get spent, correct?
Madam Chair, I think that remains to be seen. Frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if we're able to spend quite a lot of it once we get the contract executed, given the need and how quickly we might execute it. So I wouldn't like to say, but essentially, I think what we're saying is the city is devoting $1 million of recurring general funding for eviction prevention. We did so this year, and we will do so next year. And, you know, there's no carryover at all, right?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I do want to clarify something, and if I can't remember if I misspoke earlier on this, that eviction prevention money is not actually in the general fund. It is in the Human Services Fund. So it would revert to balance in the Community Development Fund, which is Fund 240, which is shared by several funds, but by several departments, but Human Services is a large portion of that and would be continue to be, you know, available to the Human Services Program.
Okay.
As balance.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, now I have a better understanding. And I guess in terms of data, I would say just we probably don't hear about folks or even that know about the Connect program, that this can help them with eviction. From what we see from that last report is a lot of people that aren't able to, they may not be, say, getting eviction notices, but they're getting almost doubling of their rent. The landlords are increasing rent. And so I would surmise that a lot of those people are leaving Santa Fe, and that's what the numbers were showing us for that housing report. That people are actually, we're having a out migration of folks actually completely leaving Santa Fe because they can't afford to live here. So maybe we don't hear about the eviction notices. Maybe it's just the way the landlords are doing it this way is just increasing rent. And we have no control over rent. We don't have any way to do rent control. So I don't know if that, do you think that that's potentially one of the things that we're, Director Ochoa, that we're seeing? And that's why we're not seeing numbers of evictions?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, I can't really say, I mean, anecdotally, we know through our Connect navigators that yes, people are needing to leave Santa Fe because they can no longer afford rents, that they are, you know, experiencing pressures with their landlords when they're unable to pay and access those funds quickly. The nice thing about these funds is that they go out after the people have been qualified for the funds, they go out as direct cash assistance. We also learned that some people are, you know, so housing insecure, but they're so afraid of losing their housing that they forego paying their utility bills. Certainly our utility department sees that. They go feeding their families and themselves. They forego other payments that they have to make. So the nice thing about the way this program is structured is that it's direct cash assistance, and that empowers the individual who's experiencing housing instability to address the issues as they see fit once they've qualified.
Thank you for that clarity. And I'm glad to hear it's direct cash assistance, and I'm sure that there's ways that you'll be able to utilize the funds. I hope it gets out the door quickly. What's my thought there? I would guess I was just thinking about, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. That's what happens when you're like full of cold medicine. Yeah, I guess I just see this as still the major need. So I hope that your staff is able to utilize it quickly, the amount that we have right now, and then what will revert to fiscal year 24. Let's see. There was a bullet point about for fiscal year 24 about something you would be pursuing, and you talked about growing sustained advocacy and support services for domestic violence and sexual assault and human trafficking survivors. And it was saying about support for available 24/7 on-call basis. Can you tell us more about what that looks like?
Madam Chair, Councilman Villarreal, I'd invite Director Sanchez up and perhaps with her program manager, Sophie Andar, to speak to that.
Madam Chair, Counselor Villarreal. So this is one of our initiatives that is actually coming out of our ARPA funding around community violence. And I'm going to invite Sophie Andar, who's our program manager, who's focusing on domestic violence, to give a rundown about the program.
Welcome, Sophie. Good to see you.
You too, Councilwoman. I'm sorry, would you mind repeating the question?
Oh, it was related to a bullet point for this following year. One of the goals about growing a sustained advocacy and support services program, or maybe it's a contract for domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and it said that it will be available on a 24/7 on-call basis. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the question. So the aim is to be able to establish a 24/7 on-call workflow system that would be a knitting together of advocates, case managers, navigators from a variety of organizations. Doesn't exist yet. We know that the demand for services outweighs the supply at this time significantly. So our intention is to hire a contractor who will be coming on board shortly, funded through ARPA, who is a domestic violence specialist, and will be providing technical assistance and oversight, support, collaboration to ensure that this workflow system is sustainable and can lend to a multidisciplinary approach that is culturally responsive and appropriate, linguistically responsive. But yes, the need right now is serious because we simply don't have adequate capacity across the community for victim survivor support services.
So is this potentially an effort to make all the service providers more efficient, to understand kind of how the connectivity between each other as it relates to a survivor or victim?
Absolutely. We want to ensure that there is improved communication and coordination. One of the better practice models nationally is a coordinated community response council. And our intention is to really be in line with that best practice, so that no matter what agency, an advocate, or if they're independent is working for, there is good shared communication around not only the victim survivors, but also the perpetrators, who are often in need of some of the same basic services that victims are.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing more about this. Do you all have a plan, since this is ARPA funding, that will you be thinking about how to fund it into the future for like next fiscal year or next year?
Absolutely. Really grateful to have the PD's partnership on this initiative in particular. The demand for domestic violence services definitely burdens the police department, as it does all emergency response organizations across the country due to the high prevalence of domestic violence. So for this forthcoming RFP that we will be releasing, it's actually joint funding through ARPA and also through the PD's $100,000 that they have recurring for sexual assault and domestic violence advocacy services. So really grateful to have this partnership in place, and the specialists who we're hiring will be available to assist with training needs and just troubleshoot to ensure that we're doing our very best.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I'm looking forward to hearing more about how that's working and moving forward with your team and the contractor that will be hired. Did you say that they have been hired already?
Yes, Councilwoman Villarreal, they are just waiting for the final confirmation from SAM.gov. It's a new federal funding requirement that all of our subcontractors have a unique entity ID, and it's taking a minute, but it's rearing to go.
Great. Excellent. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you.
And let's see. I think for this is just a question about Fogelson. There was for the plan for this coming fiscal year about completing an environmental and structural study. Can you tell us the time frame for that and what that would entail? Oh, strange. I can't hear you.
I have to turn the
There
microphone.
we go.
Madam Chair and Councilor Beata. Yes, so this is the first phase of feasibility study on the Fogelson building to become a 21st century library within our system. So we will be looking at the architectural, mechanical systems, et cetera, and sort of some preliminary planning that can help us move forward with finding funding for the project.
And what's the time frame for the first phase?
We would like to complete this by the end of next fiscal year. We're working collaboratively with Public Works.
This fiscal year, you said?
Not this fiscal year, but within next fiscal year. I'm not quite sure when the study will actually be complete, but probably within the first 6 months of next fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all I have, actually. Thank you all for your work, and I appreciate the details and working with all of you in different capacities. And I yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. All right, I have a number of questions. Maybe I'll start with Chief Joy. And let's see. I'm always interested. So you talked about in FY, or actually in calendar year 2022, you said that 21% of your calls were self-initiated. Did I get that right?
Madam Chair, that's correct.
And just for context, is that, compared against other communities or best practices? Like, is that a pretty high number, a low number? What kind of number is that?
So it,
Or do you compare against other similarly sized?
at its face value, it's just a comparison for us. But when, if you remember back with our the matrix study, they did, from reviewing our data from 2019 pre-pandemic, they did assess that for our agency size and the community size, for the types of service and the amount of services that we handle and respond to, we are above average in our call volume.
Above average in your call volume, but are you above average in your self-initiated?
I would have to look that and get back to you.
I guess I focus in on that number because Director Ochoa, you were going to say something.
Madam Chair, I don't want to quote the number, but I believe that the matrix study set a target, and that number definitely meets, if not exceeds, that target. My recollection.
I believe that's correct.
Given the call volume, the community size, that PD was meeting and exceeding the goal of being proactive, which is essentially not just responding to something that comes across the CAD.
Yeah, and I guess I think of it in the context that we as counselors hear and get a lot of complaints about things like muffler noise, running red lights, traveling too fast. And so for me, it seems like this is one way in which we address those things, right? So that's why I'm interested in that number.
Right. And Madam Chair, kind of going back to what we've been able to do with the staffing increase over the past year, we've been able to add staffing to our support operations and traffic in particular. So that has added to their capacity to be able to be proactive in their enforcement.
Right. And that was the next thing I was going to ask you, is that you talked about increased minimum officer staffing. You talked about I got my page numbers all mixed up here. I think you talked about increases in your, sorry, it's got too many. But anyway, generally increases in support and operations were going to allow you to do more, quote unquote, what you guys call operations. Like I know you have one now on Cerritos. And I know that is one way that you do kind of crack down on these problems that we see in the community. So that's going to help with some of these problems that we get a lot of calls about, right?
Madam Chair, that's correct.
And yeah, and so that's why I'm just always interested in that self-initiated number and where we fall, what that number means. So I think over time it would be helpful to understand kind of where we are relative to whatever we should be comparing ourselves against.
Right. And Madam Chair, what I've said over the years, generally speaking, our highest call for service that we get input from dispatch are disorderly conducts, welfare checks, things of that nature. But even in years where our staffing has struggled, call our proactive close patrols, proactive traffic stops, things like that is still our highest call volume in comparison to our other calls that we receive.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just real quick, point of clarification on my last step up with Councilwoman Villarreal. I misspoke. I said we have one female sergeant, but on the current sergeant list, our number 1 and number 3 are both females. So I think I inadvertently promoted the first one already in my head. So that'll happen.
He's thrilled.
Yeah, that'll happen this summer, I believe. So.
And Councilwoman Villarreal is giving you a big thumbs up. You can't see her, but we can from this angle.
And of the 3, so we've had 21 new hires since July. And of the 21, we have had 3 of those are female, 2 laterals and 1 cadet. And she's in the academy as we speak.
And just to go back to my question, I will say that the police ride along I did, and I think it must have been pre-pandemic. I need to come back and do another one. Certainly, we spent most of our time on that ride along, just responding to, welfare checks, exactly the kinds of calls you were talking about. And I talked with the officer about, well, look at that. How come you can't do that? And, there's a broken windshield, which I know are really low priority for you, but other things. It was very interesting to see also through an officer's eyes, how they drive down the street and what they notice compared to just, layperson driving down the street. I mean, it was very, very interesting education for me. So need to come back and do that. But I am very interested in how we continue to support you and, addressing some of these things. And I don't know, I struggle with this. I know you guys like to do operations, but how do we get it so that you have more capacity to do other things? And I know you're going to tell me technology. And so I stepped right into that. So we're just going to move along.
Fair enough, Madam Chair.
Deputy Chief Chaplain, you talked about records, and I don't know, Chief, if you want, actually, no, it was Valdez, sorry. Talked about records. I know we've had a lot of, well, we have struggled in that area. I think I saw that's one of your goals, is to continue to make progress there. Can you just speak a little bit about where we are in getting up to date on evidence management processes, policies, and infrastructure? I see it is on page 70, part of your goals, and it's certainly something that's gotten attention over the last couple of budget cycles. Just be interested to hear how things are going.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thankfully, due to the support that we got from members of this body, we've been able to staff that unit up. So we recently had a new supervisor, so that would bring us up to 2 supervisors in the evidence unit that are staffing that unit. So we're able to make a lot of headway in getting caught up on disposing of our inflated inventory. Unfortunately, we've had items that were in our inventory that go back to, I know one piece of evidence goes back to the 70s. One of them is like a rock where the case numbers were written on it. And there's other things that we've accumulated over the decades where they weren't just being disposed of, but it's supposed to be one item comes in, one item out the door, so we can make sure we don't get into that situation. But a lot of effort's been done. We have a great staff that does a tremendous amount of work in getting us where we need to be. Again, our focus is to become accredited, but the support that we've received with technology purchases, staffing as well, they're really showing their efforts. One thing we also see too is through professional development, many of our folks that are in the evidence unit are going to the crime scene tech position. So we've had a couple transition there, and we have 2 right now in the selection process that will are trying to become crime scene techs as well. But with the policies, our staff, it's really helping us. But like I mentioned to members of this body before, it is a long game. It's not going to be an overnight change, but we're certainly going in the right direction.
And as I recall, last budget cycle, you were trying to make improvements in the evidence room itself. How's that going?
So a lot of the inventory stuff, it's looking a lot better. I think there's something that we could probably look at. I think we're at a point where maybe if you guys have time to come down to see the progress that's been made in comparison to the photos from the initial assessment that was done. And I'd love for you to speak with our staff firsthand to hear about the great work that they do. And again, they're really dedicated to making a lot of improvements done.
Okay. Yeah, maybe when I do my ride along, I can stop by the evidence room. Okay, I think that's all I have for police. Let's see. I want to talk about the emergency management office and something that was mentioned almost in passing, microgrids for stormwater runoff. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the council. There are 2 projects. Microgrid is a vision to provide auxiliary power. And then a second project is stormwater management. And these are projects that would be in part funded by mitigation funds that are awarded as the consequence of having a federal disaster declaration.
So I guess I'm confused. What are we doing here? This is backup power or,
Yes.
okay. In force.
And then the stormwater management is a totally separate project.
Okay, okay. Gotcha. And what are we doing with stormwater runoff? We're helping to
Well, if I
channel it.
could, I'd like to maybe invite Kyle to come up and speak to that because he's been working with Public Works on this project.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So yeah, of those 2 projects, these are both, we haven't received this funding yet. We think we will. They're both coming out of FEMA funds through a program called BRIC, which is Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities. They're both planning projects. So the idea is that, once we receive the plans and designs, then they would become funded in a future funding cycle. Both of these, we're working closely with the Public Utilities and Public Works departments. Stormwater retention, we are working closely with Melissa McDonald and Zoe Isaacson. They are the subject matter experts. We would be managing the grant while they would be managing the project. So in an effort to not speak out of turn, I don't want to get into the technical specifics of stormwater management because I'm not an expert. But the specific site that they're proposing doing this at is Ashbaugh Park along Cerritos Road, where there has been flooding issues in the past.
Great. That's very helpful and colors that in quite a bit. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Of course.
The Senior Services Center that we're going to create, do we have a location on that?
Madam Chair, we do not have a location. We need to tie it into the senior plan, which looks at the needs throughout the community. We anticipate, however, that a large number of our centers are concentrated here in this side of town, if you will. And we have an increasing senior population in the south part of the city. So somewhere in the south part of the city, we would anticipate seeing this. Is that right? Yes.
But what's the time horizon? Probably, those are significant facilities,
Danielle,
correct?
Would you like to take that?
Counselor, we're working with Public Works right now to start identifying the design process. So we're in phase 1 at this point, and we go forward, we'll be going through a phase 2 design process. So I don't have any specifics at this point for that, but I'll get back on that.
Okay, but we're thinking about it already. So I guess that's the important point.
Yes.
Great. I was struck by the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council or Committee being moved under recreation. And I have a soft spot in my heart for the Mayor's Youth Advisory Board. Curious, why are they moving under recreation, and is that limiting the scope of what they can potentially do, or what was the reasoning for that?
Madam Chair, I'm sure Director Sanchez Tucker can elaborate on this, but I also have a soft spot in my heart for the Mayor's Youth Advisory Board, which used to live in the Youth and Family Services Division. When we moved the youth programs out of the Youth and Family Services Division into recreation, Mayor's Youth Advisory Board remained in the Youth and Family Services Division because they can look at a wide array of needs for the city and make recommendations from a youth perspective on what the city should be doing, as they should continue to do.
Right, and they should.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're not necessarily limiting their scope, but there is an operational efficiency as we bring the teen center on board. We had a need to, well, there are two things. We had a need to have an advisory board on this teen center project that was led by youth. And so here we have this Mayor's Youth Advisory Board. And we've often found too that the Mayor's Youth Advisory Board does really well and really enjoys having a practical, tangible project. For now, it's recommendation on the teen center. That may not, it need not remain that way into the future. And recommendation on the teen center, we think of what happens in the teen center in terms of programming as kind of a microcosm of what's needed in the city as a whole. I don't think it precludes the Mayor's Youth Advisory Board thinking about the bigger issues that teens are facing in our community and youth are facing in our community. And really it gives them an opportunity to look at those things through the lens of what this teen center could do about those things. But it's not a permanent focus for them necessarily. It's operationally convenient, and I'm a fan of not creating another board and committee when you don't need to. Some of you know that we've worked to consolidate those within community health and safety, and so this was an example of a kind of alignment of needs. Would you say that's accurate to say?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We also work very closely with our counterparts in youth and family, and so we make sure that they are engaged with our processes. We understand the data they're providing and the information that they are producing, and so that we can work closely with that. But with our teen center manager coming on board, this just gives a real opportunity to focus on serving the youth and having the Mayor's Youth Advisory Board really have some youth development leadership opportunities within the broader youth programming.
And Madam Chair, I'd just also add, as you know, it's a challenge to staff committees, boards, and commissions. And we had staffing capacity within recreation, and we're really happy about that. The Youth and Family Services Division has a small staff and can't always staff all of the boards and committees and commissions that it's tasked with. So this worked in that way as well.
Yeah, I don't want their mission to narrow, and I don't want them to get pigeonholed. And, maybe this is the highest and best use for those youth leaders at this moment, but let's not lose sight of the value of having them weigh in more broadly. And it also reminds me that I think during the pandemic, took away something like $50,000 for them to do, and I'm going to mutilate the name, advisory based, what is it?
Madam Chair, community-based participatory budgeting.
Yeah, see, it's a mouthful.
Yeah, they had $50,000 in capital funds, and they came a really long way. We talk about survey results. The Mayor's Youth Advisory Board during that time, I believe, had like 430 survey respondents, which blew a lot of our surveys out of the water just with their social media networks. And they did a lot of good work on that. And we did lose that funding, unfortunately, during the pandemic. So we're always looking for opportunities for them to engage with the civic processes and to bring in their big ideas, because they do have wonderful big ideas. So absolutely hear you. Don't want to lose that focus for money.
Yeah, and I bring it up again because, I don't think that money's been restored. And yet I think my experience, my anecdotal experience tells me that that kind of opportunity of being able to award funding, to have control and to be able to think strategically about how you do that, there's a lot of value. There's a lot of teaching that comes from having that kind of responsibility. And so, if we can, I don't know, look for ways to restore that, I'd love to see that in the future. I don't know. And maybe I need to put that on my list of, whether it's seeking donors or looking for grant funding, or I just think it's a really important thing. And I know it went away during the pandemic, and I don't want to lose sight of it. So. Okay, let's see. I think I'm almost. Oh, I forgot to ask the chief. I didn't realize motor vehicle theft was such a big problem. Can you give some context on that? I mean, I know it is in Albuquerque, but.
Madam Chair, yeah, we have seen a pretty significant spike over the last couple of years, specifically to motor vehicle theft, and it's a statewide, it's a national issue. We're seeing, just as an example, there are TikTok threads that are as PSAs to help educate people on how to steal motor vehicles. So it's not what you would normally think, where back historically where they're using them as like a chop shop or taking them apart for parts. They're using them for transport between different locations. We're finding we have a pretty high recovery rate. I want to say roughly above 80% of all of our stolen motor vehicles are being recovered, but they're being recovered in like Placitas and Albuquerque. And we're recovering a lot of vehicles from other jurisdictions as well. So we believe they're using them to transport, to go back and forth between cities. But it's a national problem, but certainly one here in New Mexico.
Interesting. That's good to know. All right. And you're not Animal Services. That's Chief Moya? No, that's.
I mean, he can have it.
Tell me something. So the other thing I get a lot of complaints about is barking dogs. And how does that work? I have trouble getting an answer, which is why I'm going to ask it now. There's supposedly some process you're supposed to, report your barking dog, and you have to report it a certain number of times. And then the thing I can't ever get the answer to is, once you've done that, then what happens?
Right. And with the ordinance as it is now, and I wouldn't be able to, I don't have it brought up, so I wouldn't be able to tell you the specific number to make it effective.
3, I think, but maybe it's more.
Yeah. But they would be, the person who is receiving the complaint would be eligible for a civil citation. And
do we issue those?
Our Animal Services would issue those.
Do we do it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But it's a more broad conversation, I think, than we have time for today.
Okay. Well, maybe
We can talk about that.
if you wouldn't mind following up with me, it is something it's an outstanding question for me.
Happy to do it.
And we don't have to belabor these hearings, and I know I'm probably over time, so let's let's chat about that.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think I wanted to ask about swim programs too, sorry. So last year, we apparently reduced the number of days to add more opportunity. Is that right? And is that still going to be the model? Or how are we addressing the demand? And I think you spoke to this a little bit about how you're going to assess the demand in essence, and then see how you address whatever the additional need is. And I think that was in answer to Councilwoman Villarreal. But I did have some constituent concerns that the actual number of days had reduced so that we could provide more opportunities. And I think really this is an opportunity for the community to understand what we're doing, which is why I ask it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to have Director Stinnett take a stab at this. It's a very complex issue that we continue to work on and look at how we can improve services.
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the council. Upon my arrival to the city of Santa Fe in August, I came at the very end of the swim lesson cycle. We offered 4 2-week sessions throughout the summer and subsequently added an additional 5th at the beginning of August to try to meet the demand for those that missed out on those first 4. And then in terms of pool hours, it goes off of how many swim instructors we have available and those available times for them to teach those swim lessons. Right now, we're looking at the same model as we had for the past summer, 4 sessions and an additional 5th, depending on the demand that we have.
Additionally, Madam Chair, so we have safety regulations that we have to abide by. And currently the standard is 30 per lifeguard to make sure that we are minimizing risk. And so this is where this doesn't have anything to do with COVID. It has to do with making sure that we're following Red Cross standards with safety and making sure that our patrons and customers are safe. And so that's where we've had to limit hours to make sure that we have enough lifeguards per person using the pool. And so it's a real balancing act to make sure that we can open up enough hours at each of our locations. The number of hours that we serve, I don't have that offhand. I'm not sure if you know how many operating hours we have at the pool, but we operate a lot of hours in comparison to other like Los Alamos or Rio Rancho, other cities our size. And so we are just trying to balance need geographically with our different facilities and then make sure that we can have safety as a part of our scheduling process. So that's why adding our lifeguards has been a huge focus for us. Recruiting, training, we have been behind the curve with the swimming lessons, as Director Stinnett talked about. So kids hadn't been getting swimming lessons for the past 3 years. And now we don't have a lot of people who are even comfortable enough in the pool to begin the lifeguard training program. So we're just thinking as creatively as we can to find ways that we can utilize the staff that we have.
Okay, and you have to be a lifeguard in order to be a swim instructor? Can you bifurcate those?
Correct. Madam Chair, you have to have your lifeguard instructor certificate, but subsequently you have to have your lifeguard certificate first. So in order for the Red Cross chain, you have to have lifeguard and then WSI after water safety instructor.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Thank you. I do have a couple other questions, but I'm going to forego them because I've taken up too much time and I want to, I don't know, other questions from the committee? Councilor Rivera.
Well, I don't know if it's a question or just an experience, but at Bicentennial Pool, they don't have much access. They don't have, depending on the lifeguards, how many people can be in there, and then their kiddie pool is much smaller than GCC, of course. So I was there last year and people were unaware of the sign up process, made people angry. And then there were people there that didn't have access to a computer in order to be able to sign up. So they asked staff to sign them up because they didn't have that access, and that wasn't allowed. There wasn't a computer in the facility that people could take advantage of. So what happens in those situations where people just don't have access to be able to sign up?
Yes, Madam Chair and Council, Councilor Rivera, we are again working on that platform, which will allow further access, not only to computer access, but mobile access. So once we have that platform in place, it's going to allow greater access rather than just online via computer.
Well, so that's a different part of town. There may be people that don't have access to either. And I know we think everyone has a phone, everybody has a computer, but I was there and heard this poor lady with her 2 kids getting turned away because they didn't have a way to sign up.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Councilor Rivera. I do agree that our system, when we first rolled out Bicentennial Pool, was not the best, but it was eliminating people standing in line for a very long time to get to the front. And so it did help, but we just did not have the infrastructure communication methods that we needed. So we're hoping that with our website being updated with communications, working with our communications team, that we can have a better plan in place, bringing in hotspots if we need to and tablets if we need to sign people up. But I think this past year, people they've gotten used to at least looking at the time slots that we have available to sign up for the system. And then we're going to evaluate whether or not we even use that system at the Bicentennial Pool, because that is primarily used for recreational purposes. So I think we're going to look at that as we're planning for the schedule for the summer.
And then similar to that, how do you keep the same people from signing up all the time?
I'll let Director Stinnett answer that question.
Yes, Councilor Rivera, we, again, with that platform, we're going to be able to have analytics. We're going to be able to track the amount of times that people sign up for those. Through the use of that system, we're going to be able to offer spots as a revolving sign up rather than a daily sign up. Right now, our system is limited to a Sign Up Genius, which is a free service that we have. So this platform is going to allow us those capacities to open up signups weekly or monthly and revolving so that they can't be filled by the same patronage daily.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, any other questions from the committee? And if
Madam
not-
Chair, I just had a couple
Okay,
to be fairly quick. Just wanted to remind, if staff could remind me about the guaranteed income project, the ARPA funds that will go towards that match. What's that amount again?
Madam Chair, Councilman Viral, that is $500,000 and it serves 98 people at the Santa Fe Community College, parents with young children.
Thank you. And then I think this question is for City Manager Blair.
city manager's not chamber at the moment, sorry.
Well, I guess I was curious, and we can get into this in probably next week, but why risk management and safety is moving to general government and how that's affecting emergency management.
Madam Chair, Councilman Viral, I can speak to that a little bit. We've operationally moved safety out of emergency management into general government, and it's partnered with risk at this time during this year, essentially, and it's worked very well. Safety is essentially an internal facing service to make sure all of our employees are safe, where emergency management is primarily an external facing service where we make sure residents are safe. And so there's a lot of synergy, and we had heard from staff, and this was part of why we recommended this move, that, separating risk and safety was inefficient. And I think they're proven to be better efficiencies putting them together. That's what I can speak to my, on my perch on it. And then what this budget does is just formalize that move that's already been affected this year.
And when you say that's what you heard from staff, you're saying staff in risk management and safety?
Madam Chair, Councilman Villarreal, staff in the safety section of when they were in emergency management were very adamant that it was not helpful for them to be separated from risk in that way.
Right. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Okay, I'm missing my committee. But I think, yeah, why don't you do that?
Well, there are 3 people here.
There are 3 people here, it's true. I'm waiting a minute while Counselor Cassett texts our committee back for a motion. Oh, buzzing over there. Just, will you see if they're in the hallway and if they could just come back and we'll wrap this up? Sorry, everyone.
Or I can make a motion and we can be done.
I'll ask another question while we're standing here. Paramedics and sending them away for a year of training. Do you see any change in that? Is that, I'm seeing more people who are doing online training and not having to be away from jobs. Is that in the future at all for paramedic training, or is it really so hands-on, you got to be there?
Madam Chair, I think it's hands-on.
Yeah.
I don't think we want to even go down that route. We want to invest in the right way of doing things. UNM program is really good about, very strict guidelines, things going forward, and Chief Johnson's going to help me with this question.
Great. And then I have my committee back and we'll do a motion. So don't go away, guys. I was filling dead air.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the paramedic programs are actually doing a hybrid type of learning. The initial few weeks is online just to get them in the mode of testing and reading their didactic stuff, but it is pretty intensive once the full-time starts. It requires full-time 4 or 5 days a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. We have the committee back and I think we've spent a good amount of time going over the budgets and these different departments. And I want to thank everybody for being here and for answering all our questions, big and small. And I think if the committee doesn't have any other questions, I think we're ready for a motion. Go ahead.
I will make a motion for preliminary approval of the community health and safety budget.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second to preliminarily approve this community health and safety budget. And if we could get a roll call, please.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Counselor Cassett.
Yes.
Counselor Lindell. Counselor Rivera.
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal.
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, terrific. Thank you everyone for being here. We are adjourned. We'll see you next week. Although what time do we start on Tuesday, just for the committee's sake?
Madam Chair, we have not published the agenda yet.
Okay.
We were planning to start at 1 p.m.
Okay.
on Tuesday.
Okay, perfect. Just want to give everybody a sense of that. Thank you.